Yeah, hello. I'm straight in now. Yeah, hopefully everything's working and everybody's in the right box. You look like it from this small screen. So hello, welcome. Thursday night, RPG night, and tonight it is, as always, Call of Cthulhu. Yes, so the party of investigators. We're still Chuggerwugger down. He's going to join us once this investigation has been completed. So hopefully he will be back on the next investigation. Thank you to Longshanks EPG for his continuing subscription. 13 months, that's a huge amount. Does that put you at top of the table?
No.
Is Chuggerwugger's at the top?
I can't remember.
He was at the top when I looked. There's a leaderboard underneath the stream, so and if you click on subs, you can see who's top. So yeah, so we left the party of investigators in a rather they seem to be stumbling across murders, and that's all I'll say at the moment. I'll give you a complete synopsis of what's happening shortly, but first of all I'll allow the players to introduce who they are and who they will be playing tonight, and we'll start off with Mr. Pickles.
Hi guys, I am Mr. Pickles and I am playing Aaron Weber. Aaron Weber is an inquiry agent, which is the Victorian era's equivalent of a private investigator, and in his background he was a private an inquiry agent with a company, but after his tragedy of having his daughter murdered, he's kind of gone out on his own. So he is more of a private investigator in this Victorian era, and he's been traveling around with a couple cohorts from his Carlton Club social status, but otherwise he has the typical abilities of a private investigator, being able to spot hidden details, hit things really hard with his brass knuckles, a little bit of research, and that's Aaron Weber. I'm gonna throw it on over to our doctor here to learn a little bit about some Victorian era medicine.
Hi guys, I'm at Longshanks CPG, in Wills's second highest subscriber.
Oh, second highest.
By default, because Chuggerwugger has the same amount of months as me, but his name begins with a C and mine begins with an L.
Oh no, that's somewhat unfair, I think.
That is somewhat unfair. But so yeah, tonight I'm playing Dr. Gordon King, the group's medical doctor, with a minor interest in the early onset of human psychology, which is still sort of like a very new concept that people actually have mental health and those sort of things, although the mental health is still understanding is still very, very, very basic. It's more sort of like, you're a loon, stick him in a loony bin, dose him up with laudanum and opium, or opiate.
Don't give me too many ideas for the.
He also does other bits and pieces. So he has a medical practice as what we now call GPs, or general practitioning doctors. So he has certain sorts of like high class paying, because there's no NHS in those days, paying clients, and sort of like medicine was more sort of herbal remedies or lots of sort of like newfound chemicals that they'd found had done all sorts of things, then mixing with other sort of things. So yeah, and they started doing the pills a lot. So they would crush things down into a powder and then grind it into a little pill and go, there you go, have that with your tea type thing. Didn't really know what it did, and most of the time it led to arsenic poisoning and those sorts of things.
I was listening to a program this morning that was all about history, because it was based on Victorian, the south area of the UK, with Portsmouth and Plymouth and things like that, and it was saying that at one point syphilis was so rampant in the British Navy that they actually considered it a threat to national security. And they didn't know how to treat it efficiently, so they used to give them mercury, which used to have awful side effects, but and never used to cure syphilis at all.
It just killed them quicker.
Yeah, so
you can look at that as a cure, because syphilis is a nasty thing and it drives you insane.
Right. So let me give you a quick synopsis of the story so far. So the adventure is set in Victorian London, 1888. We're about in the January time of it. So later on in the year is when Jack the Ripper will appear, if you know your historical facts. So the party of investigators were actually hooked into this investigation via Dr. King's nephew, Alan Pace, who had to go off to Dover to one of his fellow soldiers from a regiment called the Buffs. He sadly had died. Anyway, it soon came to pass that they realised that the members of the regiment was slowly being eliminated. Orland Reynolds accidentally fell in front of a train in Charing Cross, and then they went down to Dover, where it was, I'm just trying to find his name, Herbert Crouch had died mysteriously in his garden, and they came back to London and to start their investigation to try to get deeper into the problem. Since then, Major Gower, who the party made an acquaintance with in the Army and Navy Social Club, was impaled on nearby railings by what had to be quite a tall individual. And this is when they met Inspector Craddock, who is from Scotland Yard and is investigating the case from the police side of things. The party then went off again, and they were contacted by Vanessa Lawrence, who's an Egyptologist from the British Museum, and she was very concerned about her fiance, who was seeing things and almost going mad, being haunted by visions of the god Anubis. Anyway, that was find his name, Jeffrey Jordan. That was Elliot Sangster is the doctor, who's another member of the regiment. And when they were at the Army and Navy Club last, they went to have a meal there with Alan Pace, and Toby Norton, who's sort of like the doorman, was just getting acquainted with Mr. Webber when he was summoned away for something, and next they heard an ear-splitting scream from Toby Norton, and they ran outside to find that he was dead. He had had his back broken, probably over the knee of an individual. The only thing that I forgot about all this is when Major Gower died, the investigators actually got there very quickly, and as he came back, he muttered some words to the investigators, and they said Abadan, but it was real, alive, and then he died. And they found out that Abadan has something to do with Africa and Egypt, and somewhere when there was some kind of regimental raid on some kind of a cult, and they also found out that various things were taken, and that was it. They went to see Jeffrey Jordan at his house, had to encounter the fearsome landlady, but anyway got back and got beaten past her and met Jeffrey Jordan, who arranged to meet them tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock in his office. I think that's what it was. It was,
yes, at the museum.
Yeah, so, and that's where we left it. So we are going to pick it up, guys, when you are outside the Army and Navy back alley, to where the scene of Toby Norton's murder has occurred. Toby Norton is on the floor in a strange almost like bent situation, and it's quite clear that his back has been broken. You saw somebody run it off, but who that was you don't know. The only other thing that I would like you to do, please, before we go any further, is that I would just like you to roll for me a spot hidden roll.
Oh, I thought you were about to say insanity roll.
No, we
start off with a bang.
I just want some spot hidden. So the doctor sees nothing. Can you just change your the tokens?
Sorry.
Yeah, and Mr. Webber, you do notice that there seemes to be an overturned dustbin, like a dumpster sort of thing. It looks like Toby Norton was almost like putting out the trash or the rubbish. Something similar to that when he got called out here. So you notice that as you sort of like look to one side, the rest of the Army and Navy club have sort of like come out, and there's a whole load of majors, etc., doing their normal, like, well, I don't really think, how inconsiderate of him being murdered outside the Army and Navy Club. I really can't see. I hate to think what the papers are going to make about this tomorrow morning, and being rather upper class and socialites. They almost like see it as an inconvenience that Toby Norton, the doorman, is actually dead, rather than something quite tragic. As you can imagine, bobbies are arriving, constables are arriving via their carriages, and it's pretty soon you will be aware that Inspector Craddock is actually arriving once more on the scene. Is there anything you guys would like to do before he arrives?
So Dr. King will turn to, I assume his nephew's standing next to him or near.
Yes, yeah.
Nearby. He's going to turn to Alan and say, "Alan, quick, my medical bag, it's under the table." And then he's going to run forward to Toby, and he wants to try and sort of like work out if he's alive or not by taking his pulse. And that's what
that's up there. I mean, that taking the pulse doesn't require a skill roll for you. He's definitely dead. And he's sort of like Alan runs off to get your medical bag. Mr. Webber, is there anything you would like to do?
Yes. Mr. Webber would like to investigate the trash, kind of trying to be somewhat subtle about it, pushing his way slowly through the crowd to investigate. Is there anything suspicious about this trash?
Roll your idea roll. So that's your intelligence. Yeah, you don't think it looks like it's the remains of the dinner. Sort of like trash, almost like unused food, scrapings from table and plates, etc. It doesn't look anything unusual about it at all. It's while you're over there and Miss Dr. King, you're over Toby Norton's body. Alan Pace arrives back and hands you his medical bag, and Inspector Craddock comes round from the bottom of the alley, and he's marching up quite efficiently, and then suddenly stops when he sees you two, and he sort of like looks at you, Doctor, and he says, "Pray tell me, Doctor, what are you doing next to the murdered man's body?"
It's good to see you, Inspector. Somewhat timely arrival. I was just checking to make sure that the unfortunate person here had actually passed away. As it turns out, he has, because I have read in some medical journals of people surviving this sort of injury.
Checking for death, good doctor, or tampering with evidence.
Just checking for death.
Yes. He takes out his notebook and writes down something down in it, and he turns around to you and says, "Good doctor, I suggest you move away from the murdered man. since
of course.
it seems to be becoming quite a reoccurrence that you are often associated or found near to murdered innocent people.
Quite a coincidence, I assure you. And
He turns-
he'll
yeah.
stand up and pick up his bag and take a couple of steps back.
He turns to a constable and says, please take the doctor's address and details once more. And Mr. Webber, in the rubbish I see, how appropriate may that be?
I just give him a glare. I'm not going to respond to that insult.
And so the second death, and you two are here again. I will be taking your accounts shortly. Constable, can you please make sure that these good gentlemen, all of them, he refers to the rest of the Army and Navy Club, are inside. Please take statements from them in preparation for further investigation. The coroners have been informed. Please, gentlemen, nobody leave the club until you have spoken to one of my associates. And there's a whole lot of it. Well, I can't see why that is such an issue. I'm being kept prisoner in our own social club. I just cannot believe it. The police today think they have so much authority over us. And there's a lot of huffing and puffing as the people sort of like go back in, and you go back into the Carlton Club where you take your places once again at the table that you were at beforehand. Alan Pace, of course, is with you, and he says, "How absolutely dreadful!"
I know I didn't know him very well, but he seemed a nice enough chap.
Well, he was rather not of the correct social breeding, but I mean that didn't actually. Hey, he was pleasant enough to me.
Yes. The very small dealings I had with him, he seemed a pleasant man, but as you say, he's not the right breeding for socialising.
I'm somewhat concerned.
How so, nephew?
Well, I'm surprised, good doctor, you haven't picked this up. So, with all your education and obviously intellect, but it would appear that is another one of the regiment who has met quite an unfortunate end.
I had noticed, Alan. Yes, it's somewhat concerning.
Mr. Webber, you are very efficient in this sort of dealings. Have you unearthed any clues or possible motives for this?
Yes, I have.
Oh, please, enlighten me. I am somewhat concerned, as you can well imagine.
Just so I know, how close is everybody packed into this room? I'm being a suspicious American again.
Oh yeah, you can. Most of the people are actually engaged in their own discussion. There's some constables around who are taking statements. But it doesn't appear that anybody is actually eavesdropping in on your conversation at all. If they would have to make a listen roll, probably at hard or extreme to actually hear what's going on, mainly because of the discussions and the actions that are happening in the room at the moment. So you're probably quite happy to talk in hushed tones.
Yeah, I'll talk in kind of a hushed tone, but I want to make sure that I'm sitting in kind of a comfortable, laid-back way. So I might have to talk a little bit louder so they can hear, but I want to appear that I'm not uncomfortable, and I want to keep an eye on inspectors and whatnot coming close. And I say to them, we have an appointment with Jeffrey Jordan tomorrow.
Oh, is he from the British Museum?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
He had quite a bit of information, and Toby had a bit more of confirming evidence for me before,
He is due to marry in the near future a very pleasant young lady. I think her name is Vanessa. Although I'm not Miss Lawrence. Sorry, my familiarity there was completely uncalled for. Yes, Miss Lawrence. I think they have set the date for possibly July, maybe even August.
Yes, we have had the very brief pleasure of meeting the good lady.
Oh, really? How did you meet her?
We went to the museum. It was just a casual encounter that happens at museums. We're very, very talkative people. We're at museums.
Oh, I see.
But I believe the problem that we're dealing with may not be natural. I believe it has to do with the story you told us.
Not natural?
Yes.
You mean murder?
I mean something capable of grinding a spinal cord to gritty dust. Somebody capable of
Mr. Weber! Whose spine was ground to dust? I'm so glad that he says, sorry, I just need a rather stiff drink. And he sort of like clicks his fingers, and one of the waiters, the butlers, sort of like come on and says, yes, sir. A brandy, please. Make it double, no ice, please. And he says, yes, of course, sir. And he sort of like comes back and he sort of like takes the brandy and he just sort of like knocks it back, sort of like puts it back, and he sort of like, he's obviously totally unaccustomed to it, as he probably goes, oh, right. So you were talking about spines being ground to dust, Mr. Weber.
This is serious business. People are being killed.
I know. How could Mr. Uncle, you being a doctor, you must know how spines can be ground to dust. It sends a shiver down my spine.
For a human spine, with great difficulty, it would take an obscene amount of strength, or more than one person.
Oh, I see. We're dealing with a pack, probably a horde. Yes.
No. Not a pack. There's one of them as far as I can see. There might be multiple, but at the scene of the crime, there's only one. It's a tall, dark figure, 20 ears.
Oh.
Toby saw him, and others have seen them before their deaths.
I have a very tall man who comes into the tailor shop. Maybe I equipped him in some very nice hunting gear. Just some very nice tweed. Just the other week. Yes, he must have been. What? Well, I suppose should I give you his name? He was about 6'2".
I'm just gonna glare at him for a few moments and then look over at Dr. King and say, we know that we can't take on whoever this is by ourselves.
No, he was quite a tall chap, and he looked quite robust, if I may say so myself, Mr. Weber. I'm not very good at anything to do with fisticuffs. I'm more of I pay attention to detail, fine stitching, etc. You know, these hands are not these not the hands of a puncher. They are more the hands of a fine seamstress.
I don't think, nephew, that you need worry about this particular chap. From all reports, he seemed a little bit too short from the description given.
Well, should I find this man's name for you? I'm sure I have it in my books. I could probably get it and let you have it. I probably have his address as well, if that is required.
Dr. King's unsure of this, so he's going to have a look at Mr. Weber.
It's worthwhile. Any information we can get might be worthwhile. But the person I'm thinking of is quite a bit taller. And Alan, just enjoy your brandy, because according to my hypothesis, you should be perfectly safe from whoever this is.
I'm so pleased. I just had a sudden thought of Taylor confidentiality. Am I allowed to give you vital statistics of my customers? I am somewhat. Oh, sorry. That brandy was quite strong. I feel quite lightheaded. I might have another one. And he sort of like summons the over, and when he's sort of like waiting, and all of a sudden somebody shouts, "Pace! Pace!" And he sort of like looks over and he says, "Oh, one moment. I just have to see the captain, not captain of our regiment. To be honest with you, I never think he was actually a captain, but I'm fitting him with some altering some trousers of his. Yes, he's finding it really hard to get them over his gout foot at the moment. So anyway, I will be back shortly." And he sort of like gets up, and the waiter comes over and says, "Mr. Pace's brandy," and puts it down on the table. And as he walks away, he's replaced by Inspector Craddock, who is just sort of like stood there. Gentlemen.
Good evening, Inspector.
Oh, please. I don't drink on duty.
Oh no, this wasn't for you. This is my nephew's.
I suggest you don't drink on duty either, Doctor.
No, a doctor's always on duty.
And he sort of like signals to an empty chair that Alan's left, and he said, "May I?"
Please do.
And he sort of like sits down, and he turns over his notepad. Right, let's start with you, Dr. King. Please, I noticed you hovering over the body. Please tell me what you saw, and how you came to be bent over a dead man's body.
Yes, of course. Would you like me to start from the beginning?
Can I just remind you of what to remember to dictate what you saw, because I know there was some spot hidden rolls and some listen rolls that were made earlier on. So it has to do with those rather than what you know. So I think all the rolls are still up there. I think so. Just before we finished, you failed your sanity roll, Dr. King. You also failed your spot hidden roll, but Mr. Webber made it. Mr. Webber, your spot hidden rolls were outside for the thing before to see who was running off, and the roll before that, Dr. King, you failed it as well. But Mr. Webber, that was the one that you heard the noise from. So so he turns to you, Dr. King, and says, "Please tell me how you came to be, shall we say, bent over the body of a dead man."
Yes, of course, Inspector. It started. I was having dinner here again on the invitation of
Dr.
my
King.
nephew.
Dr. King,
Please.
please, I do not need your whole night's events. Just how from how you came to be over the dead man's body would be
Yes,
fine.
of course. Upon hearing a loud, high-pitched scream, myself and Alan and the rest of the diners sort of like all sort of like went off to try and find the source. And then
please describe.
Back, we found
describe this scream.
It was a very high, high pitched, almost inhuman, but it couldn't have been because it must have come from.
Sorry, Mr. King, I misheard that word. Inhuman.
Yes, it's sort of a noise that you wouldn't have expected a human being to have been able to have made.
Hang on, I just need to make a note of that, good doctor. A scream from a human that you would not expect a human to make.
Yes, that's probably the best way of describing that. It was a very high-pitched scream.
Please, doctor, what did the scream? It sounds as if you're describing a woman's scream.
No, well, I can't say for certain. All I know is that I heard this scream, and then upon exiting the back of the Carlton Club, the Army Navy Club, along with everyone else, we found one of the butlers there bent backwards. I immediately jumped into action, sort of, and to make sure that he was still alive, asking my nephew to bring me my medical bag, which unfortunately I'd left under the table here, and I started to check for signs of life. I checked his pulse at his throat and his wrist, and that is when
your chivalry
arrived.
Your chivalry amazes me, Dr. King. You said bent over.
Yes, it's he was bent over backwards, and my humble medical opinion would be that he died without further examining the body, from breaking his back.
Interesting. And you were suspecting that the man was still alive with a broken back.
He could have been.
No, doctor. Thank you very much for your explanation there. Just a few more questions. You were found bent over the murdered body of the Mr. Norton. How long have you known Mr. Norton?
I wouldn't say long at all. He's, I believe, he's one of the waiters and possibly the doorman here at the Army Navy Club. So
yes, thank you.
Not very much at all.
And what's your feeling about those of us who are of a lower social standard than yourself?
I don't. Can you please explain what you mean by that? I don't understand. They're people. I mean, I'm obviously of a higher social class than them, but at the end of the day, I'm going. If they need assistance, I'm not going to medical assistance. I'm not.
I wasn't referring to medical assistance, Dr. King. I was just commenting about your general worthiness of the lower class.
Well, I'm sure they're. I mean, I can't speak for all of them. I've not met all of them, but the ones of the less fortunate class than myself that I've met seem to be.
Thank you, Doctor.
Very nice.
You answered my question quite clearly, and he writes down and says, "Less fortunate." Mr. Weber, please could you inform me how you were found outside in the alleyway, sorry, one moment, in the rubbish?
Well, I came here. I didn't really want to sit at the table and talk with these kinds of people, so I went to go talk with Toby, since I had met him and we seemed of similar sorts. Went off to take out some rubbish. And
he turns to Dr. King and looks at you and says, "Similar sorts." Yes, I can see that you somewhat don't fit in here, Mr. Weber. How did you come by to be here tonight?
Well, Dr. King and I are somewhat of cohorts, and didn't want to pass up dinner.
Forgive me, this is, I do believe, a members only. Are you a member of the Army and Navy Club?
No, sir.
Oh. And please tell me, continue. You were talking to the unfortunate, the late Mr. Norton, when he had to go out and, in your words, deal with some rubbish. Yes.
I presume that's what he was doing. I wasn't going to go help him do his job. So
please tell me how you ended up outside.
I heard a scream.
Oh, yes. And he turns to Dr. King and says, the inhuman high-pitched scream that the good doctor heard.
In the doctor's defense, I don't hear too many people get their spine snapped, so...
No, in my own defense, I would have expected it to be a quick and almost like noiseless death. You mentioned that he had his spine snapped. How did you come to that conclusion, Mr. Webber?
Just the way he was contorted on the ground.
Okay.
Seems like an easy conclusion to get to, huh?
And my constables have informed me that you were one of the first people on the scenes. What did you observe in the alley?
I observed that Toby's on the ground. I heard the running of footsteps, but...
Oh, the running of footsteps. With these heavy footsteps, light footsteps, hurried footsteps, the footsteps of a man with one leg. How would you describe these two?
I'm afraid I was a bit distracted by my friend.
Your friend?
Unmoving.
How long have you known Mr. Norton for?
As long as Dr. King has, but I make friends easy.
Yes, it seems a rather interesting friendship. I am somewhat confused how yourself and the good doctor knows Mr. Norton, or the late Mr. Norton, in the first place. Orson Allen arrives. He says, "Oh, no, Inspector, sorry to interrupt. Yes, I brought them here. We've been doing some investigating of ourselves. We do think that there might be a suspect who comes to my tailor shop, a rather tall man in tweed." Inspector just sort of like looks at him, and he sort of like looks at you, Dr. King, and looks at Mr. Webber and says, "It is very suspicious that you have been found at the scene of a second most unfortunate death here in London, especially since these two deaths have happened in very close proximity in time." Mr. Webber, you are a private investigator, an inquiry agent. Have you any... Is this a case that you're investigating?
Yes.
Alan goes, "Yes, they are. They are. I'm quite relieved, Inspector Craddock, that they are investigating. Can I ask you a question, Inspector?" "Yes, Mr. Pace. How can I help you?" Is it all right if I give vital statistics from my tailor's records to these people, or is that a breach of tailor confidentiality?" "I'm sure, Mr. Pace, you can give your colleagues here any sort of measurements they require. Gentlemen, please do not leave town. I am going to make further inquiries. I expect to be in touch." "Oh, yes, I am available, Inspector, as well." "Yes, Mr. Pace, thank you." And Mr. Pace, the inspector sort of like gets up and sort of like nods, "Doctor, Mr. Webber,"
Inspector,
and leaves. And Alan sort of like sits back down. "How exciting! I can't imagine, but of course it would seem that it is all right to give out tailor confidentiality. I will get the measurements to you forthwith, tomorrow morning at the earliest time. I can get to the shop rather early, and maybe, shall we say, bright and early tomorrow? Shall we say 11?
I'm afraid we have
A prior engagement at that time, nephew. We are meeting.
Maybe
The museum at that time.
maybe tea then, afternoon tea. I can get the boy to watch the shop. I'm sure he'll be happy to do that. I don't think I have any clients tomorrow afternoon, but I will be able to get those measurements. He goes,
most grateful.
as he sort of like gets a little bit closer to you both. And yes, how exciting. I wonder if we'll ever get a book written about us. Let's hope so. And he says, will you be all right finding your own way home tonight? I'm going to head off home now.
How about I escort you?
Oh, yes, by all means. And he says, oh, yes, sorry, he says, I forgot about that. And he leans forward and knocks back the second brandy and goes, oh, yes, yes.
Both might need to escort you back.
Yeah. Right, oh, yes. Safety in numbers, I understand. Most, yes. Should we have a code word? Like, the morning sun is rising, and you can reply, but it is late for the risen sun today. I think that would be quite intellectually and stimulating. Yes. Oh, I haven't had this much fun since my regiment days. I am becoming quite fond of it all. And you take him off and call a local hansom cab and escort him home, and then afterwards return to your residencies, either Dr. King's or in your separate ones. It would be absolutely fine. Is there anything that you would like to discuss between yourselves before the morning arrives?
Do you have anything you would like to mention, Mr. Weber? I think I need a few moments to absorb all the events that have happened this evening in the last couple of days and come at this with fresh eyes tomorrow morning.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess we'll be meeting at the museum in the morning.
Yes, that sounds like a good idea.
Excellent.
Okay. Is there anything you would like to do separately throughout the evening and the night? Well, it's night now because it's gone 10 o'clock.
Dr. King will probably have a look through his medical books for spinal-based injuries and those sort of things. He wants to try and gauge how much strength, if possible, it would take to break a spine. This human spine and that sort of thing.
You will know that. I mean, it is quite considerable, or the correct application. So bending somebody over backwards over a knee would break the spine quite easily. It's just quite a horrific way to go.
Yes. Mr. King wants to confirm it. That's what he thinks, but he wants to confirm it if it is possible, just for himself, so securing his knowledge. And then he will sort of ponder, thinking, well, if it was one person, they're going to have to be very strong, because they would have had to have stopped him struggling and bent him over backwards over the knee. And he's just putting those sorts of dots together.
Okay, Mr. Weber, anything that you would like to do or say?
Mr. Weber's just going to feed some local cats and then head to bed, preparing to rise early in the morning.
So it's when you rise early in the morning and you're taking breakfast and you're browsing through the Times like you do, because anybody who wants to know what is happening in London reads the Times. And as you're sort of drinking coffee and eating marmalade on toast, you come across, do you know what Yes, they have marmalade in America, don't they?
Yeah.
You come across a title in the Times, which is quite disturbing. Well, not necessarily disturbing. It almost like catches your eye. And it catches your eye for two reasons. Number one, the title says "Werewolves in London?" ? And as you read the story, it catches your eye even more. The story reads that, basically, I'm paraphrasing and summarising. Last night, a certain Dr. Elliot Sangster was found murdered. Okay, the only information that is mentioned in the story is from his wife. When apparently the young doctor was lured out of his house. This is what it says in the Times. Lured out of his house in the middle of the night by a loud noise in the back garden. He went to investigate, and then his wife stayed indoors. It was at that time that she heard a sound out in the kitchen. She was in sort of like the drawing room, and she turned to look, and she found what the newspapers, and she states she was left in deep shock by the sight of what she called a wolf-headed man who murdered her husband. Okay, and police arrived after the wife's screams brought the neighbours to check on her. Basically, shortly after that, she was there and she heard screams. They arrived, and the young doctor was found dead, murdered. It definitely says murdered, outside. In the garden. There's nothing else in the newspaper about anything else about how he died or anything like that.
Well, okay. Well, that breaks my hypothesis then. Oh no.
Dr. King, it will probably send Bates round to the local telegraph area. Bates is the butler for the house, and he wants to send a telegram to his nephew, and basically saying, make sure you're not alone, come to my house as soon as you can.
Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, so you both hear this, read this newspaper report, and you probably meet up somewhere, either at the good doctor's house or yours, Mr. Webber, and you sort of like walk in, and whoever meets the other person sort of like is waving the Times at them as they come near, and you both sort of like says, "Yes, I read it."
I have sent a telegram to Alan to make sure he's safe and to get to my house as soon as he can. Bates there will look after him.
Good. We want to make sure he's safe, because Elliot and him were the two that stayed back from Abadan.
Yes, and if Elliot has been killed by this creature, then Alan could be next.
Yeah, either that or they're being targeted on purpose. We know that the Colonel has those artifacts, or one of the two artifacts, at least.
Let's just hope we're ahead of whatever rascals and rapscallions are doing this.
I think if we can secure these artifacts, we might be able to solve this problem. But how we're going to be able to get that from Fearless Nick, it's a different question.
Yes.
just to refresh my memory, it was the Colonel had one of the artifacts and Jeffrey Jordan had the other artifact?
That's what Jeffrey told you, yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I was remembering that. Guess it's time to go to Jeffrey Jordan. I don't know. Do we trust him?
I think we have no choice at this moment in time.
Yeah.
We shall see what he says and try. I think we should probably try and persuade him to give up his artifact.
Well, we don't even know what it can do, if anything. We need to know more about this. And Vanessa's an Egyptologist. Maybe she'll know something about this Anubis.
Maybe.
Might help. Let's go meet them at the museum. Take as much haste as possible.
Sounds a very good idea.
Yeah, so you head off. You have a morning meeting with Jeffrey Jordan. And if you remember, just to refresh your memory, he's a curator at the British Museum, a very nice place, a very wealthy place. It has several well-to-do books, and it has some very nice artifacts, and you will remember that it also has, I'm trying to find the picture, oh there it is, it has the some very nice translations, and it's you are required, it does have a reading room if you remember, but you are required to book that in advance. But you are actually going to meet Jeffrey Jordan, and as you arrive at the museum, you're actually greeted at the door by Vanessa, Miss Lawrence, and she sort of like sees you arriving, and she comes up to you, and she's sort of like, you can see the porter's just about to go, excuse, and she goes, they're with me, Bert, and he says, oh sorry ma'am, yeah, it's not a problem, and she sort of like takes you over to one area and says, I'm very worried about Jeffrey Jordan.
Has something changed since we last spoke of him?
Well, he was not at his residence this morning, and when I called, and talking to a rather brusque landlady, apparently he hasn't been there for most of the night.
That is alarming. Where do you think he may have gone to?
Well, I went up to his office, and, well, I did knock, but a few minutes ago, and the door was locked. And Bert has mentioned that he hasn't seen him come in today, this morning, which makes me sort of like, almost like, believe that he may have been here all night.
Been here all night?
Say again, sorry, Mr. Webber.
You said you think he may have been in here, in the museum all night?
Yes.
Have you seen him this morning?
No. It is quite unfortunate. I'm very worried after hiring you gentlemen, so I do really hope that nothing has gone wrong at all.
Would you be able to take us to his office? We had a meeting with him this morning anyway, so hopefully we should be able to start looking there.
Yes, of course. And she starts to bustle her way with her flowing skirt, and multiple petticoats through the museum. And she takes you up what appears to be like a back staircase. And you go up the back staircase, and you seem to be going up for quite a while. It would appear that his office is quite high up, not as in social standing, but actually sheer height, up somewhere at the back of the museum. and you come to a rather small corridor at the top of a spiral staircase, and she sort of like gestures along to the corridor, the door at the end of the corridor. There's two other doors in this corridor. You can see that they're labelled, both of them, as archives. And then the door at the end has the title Dr. Jeffrey Jordan, or Dr. G. Jordan. Miss Dr. King, you figured that he's a PhD doctor rather than a GP doctor. She says yes, his office is just along there.
Oh, thank you very much, good lady. I think we will. Mr. Webber and I will go and have a look to see if he's in his office first.
Yeah. Okay then. So, what are you both doing?
I guess we'll go and try and knock on the door.
Okay then. So, as you approach, as you pass the other two doors, can you roll for me, please, your listen skills?
Ooh.
Listen carefully. Yes.
I'm a bad listener.
Yeah. So as you get close, Dr. King, you hear that there seems to be some noise coming from the Dr. Jordan's room, Jeffrey Jordan's room. It sounds almost as if somebody is flinging things around.
Dr. King's going to sort of like, as he's walking forward, he's going to sort of like go, put his hand to his ear and then whisper to Mr. Webber, "Do you hear that? Sounds like someone's throwing stuff around."
Hear what?
Yeah, and you, once Dr. King points it out to you, you can hear it, Mr. Webber. There's definitely there seems to be something or somebody or some way, as if somebody's almost like ransacking the place behind the doorway.
Do you think we should confront them?
Probably.
Dr. King's going to look down at himself, being quite tall and lanky, and then look at Mr. Webber, who's slightly stockier, and then go, "After you."
I'll equip my brass knuckles, my knuckle duster, on my right hand. I'm just slipping my hand in my pocket and grabbing that. Then use my left hand to open the door.
Yes.
If I can.
Yeah, so you both approach the door, and Mr. Webber, you pull down the handle and push, and it's locked, and there is a keyhole on this side, but there's no key at this side, so you almost like suspect that it's locked from the inside. Interestingly enough, once you try to open the door, and it sort of like rattles slightly, the noise inside stops.
Okay. Knock on the door. Yeah, I'm gonna knock on the door with my left hand.
So you saw like a on the door. Just knock. Is there anything else you would like to do? Are you?
It's Webber and King.
Yeah, and roll a listen roll for me, Mr. Webber.
Even worse.
Yeah, you sort of like you sort of like say it's Webber and King, and there seems to be no noise from inside at all. Everything seems to be suddenly silent.
Maybe I should.
Should we?
You hear a noise behind you from the top of the spiral staircase. Miss Lawrence says, "Is everything all right?"
It's quite fine. Everything's all right, Missy Lawrence. Just bear with us a moment.
Can I try? Are we within visibility of Miss Lawrence?
Yes, you can see her. Yeah.
So she would probably see if I tried to look through the keyhole. Then, yeah.
Yeah, she would see that, but you know, I'm not too sure what she would make of it.
I don't want her to make anything of that, so I'm not going to do that. Look at King.
Try and force the door.
I'm not going to break in. That doesn't.
If you would like to force the door, then you would have to make a strength roll.
Would I be able to roll law, perhaps, and know what the... Because I feel like if we break open the door, we're going to get into trouble if it's just him and he's not wanting us to enter.
And unless we have cause for concern of his life.
Roll an idea roll, both of you.
Where's idea wrong?
No, it's just your intelligence.
Oh, yeah, you have mentioned that, haven't you?
I'm rolling like somebody who's not trying to listen.
You could take 4 points of luck and change that if you wish. But Dr. King, you get the impression that, you know, if there's possibly a life at stake, then it would be quite acceptable to use physical violence or break the door down. You know, especially if somebody was on, it's against your, what was it? Is it a hippo?
The Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah, you know, you seem to be finding a lot of dead bodies at the moment. It would be quite nice to find one that you might be able to save. Jeffrey Jordan didn't seem in very much sound mind last time you were
that's
there.
very true. He did seem somewhat not all there.
Yeah.
So yeah, King's going to turn to lean into Weber slightly and whisper and say, I think if we did force the door, we'd be justified. He wasn't all of sound mind the last time we saw him. We've heard lots of noise, and I do fear the worst.
Well, let's just hope the inspector doesn't get called for this. And then I'm going to try and bust down this door.
Okay then, so roll your strength.
Power to the door!
Yeah, so you sort of like ram your shoulder into it, aiming a little bit further down by just near where the key would be, and turning the handle at the same time. You bash the door, and you hear a slight splinter as the door opens up. And at that point, Dr. King, you hear Miss Lawrence behind you, and she's holding out a key because if you remember, she works here, and she says, "Oh." You know, and just sort of like puts it back down, and you sort of like burst in, and this is the sight that you both see. Miss Lawrence does not see this, but you two do see it. Okay, so there's actually the first thing I have to tell you is that the room has been completely and utterly ransacked. There's books, there's papers, everything all over the place. There is a desk, and it's very similar to the desk that Jeffrey Jordan has at home. And you suddenly think, these are almost like the same desks. But you notice that one of the drawers has almost like been jemmied open, and it's actually been forced open. And you also see that in the middle of the floor, bent over this desk, is the dead body of Jeffrey Jordan. And there's two other things, and I say things, in the room. They seem to be about 6 foot tall. They seem to be dressed almost like in shirts and trousers, but it looks completely false. They don't. It's a complete mismatch, and they also seem to have on their heads huge like jackal headdresses, so much so that you can't see their faces at all. There's just this huge jackal like Anubis over their heads. I've got just let me do this for you, because I will bring you in a picture. I just need to find it. I think it's called Jordan. Yeah, there it is. He looks definitely dead on the stretched across the table. Mr. King, just roll a medicine roll for me, please. This is.
I'm going to look that, by the way.
Okay, so I didn't see. I'm on a different thing. I will look at it in 1 second. Yeah, how many do you need for it?
I just need 8.
8. That's absolutely cool. Then, if you cross that over,
Yeah.
yeah. So you will know this at a later date, because it's quite obvious. You're going to sort of like see from the picture that he is definitely has been strangled. So these are the 2 creatures that you see. Can you see that?
No, we're on the Carlton Club smoking.
Oh yes, sorry. Let me just pull you over.
Oh God.
Yeah, he definitely looks like he's been strangled. Now, just to let you know, there's 2 of these creatures in the room. One of them, the one in the background that you can see, is holding something. Can you see that?
Yeah, he's got some long...
Yeah, and he is stood by the window. Okay? He's actually stood halfway out of the window. And as you burst in, these 2 things sort of like look round at you. And the one from the window jumps from the window, and the other one, the one that you can see there strangling Miss Jordan, who was done some time ago, turns round, and with its arms outstretched, it starts to head towards you, Mr. Webber. Now, before you go any further, can you please make sanity rolls for seeing the body of Mr. Jordan first?
Pow. Oh, bringing it Weber style.
Okay then, so Mr. Webber, you lose 1 point of sanity.
Yeah.
And Dr. King, you lose 4 points of sanity. These dead bodies are getting to you. And then could you also so that's all you need to roll at this present moment in time. The next thing is for something else. Yeah, so this one of these masked creatures is heading towards you. So we need to just do some an initiative, so just so I get everybody on the tracker. So if you remember, you go. What's your dexterity, Mr. Webber?
50.
50. Mr. King, what is your dexterity?
55.
55.
I said it just to get the reaction out of Pickles.
And then I just need to do find out what these are. Right, okay. I'll just add this.
I'm so ready to slap one of these guys silly.
I'm just going to put it in the turn order as Jackal. So just to say that he's got a Jackal mask on. And his dexterity is a mere 10. What happens is that they sort of like start, the one at the window just leaps out the window. You're not too sure, but it almost as if he toppled rather than jumping. And this other one sort of like starts to lumber its way towards Mr. Webber and Dr. King. So Mr. King, Dr. King, you are actually first up. So
right.
Is there anything that you would like to do?
Yes. So when you asked me to add extra bits into Dr. King, I did give him a pocket knife. No idea what skills that's going to be linked to, but he wants to fish into his. He's sort of like a little bit panicky because he's felt his sanity roll and he's just a bit low. He's going to sort of like with his left hand, because he's holding his medical bag in his right hand. He's going to pat to find his.
Yeah. So just to let you know, the knife will come under a brawl.
Okay,
so it basically starts off at 25%. Okay, then. So you start to find out, Mr. Weber. What would you like to do?
Well, I want to do two things, but they're completely different plans.
This jackal-headed beast is coming towards you.
Yeah, and I just said I wanted to slap him silly, but there's the other one that we might be able to get if we act.
Yeah, you know he's just literally toppled out the window.
Exactly. If he crashed down, we might be able to rush out quick enough, but the desire for blood is overwhelming Aaron Weber's decisions. I'm going to go forward, and
Cool.
If I can, I want to punch him.
Okay, then.
Breast.
Yeah, so you roll your brawling skill, and he will roll his skill as well.
All right. Taste lead.
Yeah, so you fail, and he sort of like I'm just seeing what his dice roll is. Yeah, so you sort of like swing your your fist at him, and you almost like misjudge his approach. And he seems to be moving a lot slower than what you expected, and you just sort of like whoosh like that, almost like preempting your strike, and it just misses him altogether. And he sort of like comes up then to you and sort of like reaches out his hands to try to whack you one. Now you can now roll. You have a choice. You can either dodge out the way, or you can roll your fighting skill.
I'm gonna roll my fighting skill because I'm scuffling.
Okay then. So this guy gets a 9, so he succeeded. He's got a hard success.
And I
failed.
Not rolling.
Yeah, so he sort of like suddenly brings his fist sort of like down to punch you, and you try to parry it as it comes down, and he just sort of like comes straight down onto you, and he whacks you for 3 hit points of damage.
It's only 30% of my health.
And it just like goes bang, and you feel this almost like bony fist whack you on the side of the face. Yeah, okay then. So we're back up to the top. So Dr. King, you're up first. Is he there?
Doctor might be mute.
I'm muted. So Mr. King's sort of like looking at the size of this thing, thinking this pocket knife's not going to do anything. He's just going to drop it on the floor and drop the his medical bag on the floor, and he's going to look around for something that looks big and substantial that he could try and swing at this thing.
So what are you planning on?
A vase, a heavy textbook.
Well, there's plenty of books.
A stone statue.
Yeah. So
like ornament statue.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty. There's plenty. So make a spot hidden roll for me.
A fire poker.
Yeah. So you sort of like drop your knife and you drop your bag and you go up and you pick up what appears to be quite what you consider quite a hefty book. And you just sort of like try to whack this jackal on this jackal masked guy on the side of the head. Off you go.
Yeah. So what do I roll?
That's your brawl.
So it's just brawl skill. Okay.
Yeah. So it's set at 25 to start off with. So if you haven't put anything else into it, it'll still be 20. Yeah, so you whack him with this book, and you suddenly notice that as it comes by, you haven't picked up the best book around, and it seems to be more like a pamphlet, and you just go like that, and it sort of like hits him on the side of the head. It doesn't do any real damage to him, and he turns around to you. Could you roll a listen roll for me, please?
I'm getting worried now.
Yeah, that's a fumble. So he turns around and you swear that he says to you in quite a deep voice, "You're next." You know,
the big space is just going to go ashen white.
And Mr. Webber, you're up.
This is the session where we all die. All right, but I'm not giving up yet. I'm gonna slug this guy again. I'm not looking for anything. I'm just going hardcore boxing. I'm just trying to beat the tar out of him.
Cool. Yeah, go for it.
With my brawl. Okay. You could still parry, guys. Let's not get excited.
Yeah, but even let me do well.
Oh, I forgot I have a button that I just roll for my weapon and my roll.
Yes, you do. Yeah. So you hit, but I winner. Attacker wins with a level success. Draw, defender wins. Both fail, no damage. So yeah, we both succeed, but you win. So you actually do damage to me. So do some damage.
Excellent. Ignore the skill roll, of course. Damage 4. Ooh.
Right.
My max damage with my
let me just do that. So I'm just
are your knuckle duckers, Weber? Are your knuckle dusters the standard knuckle dusters, or are they the ones with the little spikes sticking out of each one?
I'm guessing whatever I could find in New York City before I came over to London.
Okay, so so he sort of like you sort of like whack him, and you feel that your knuckle duster sort of like make purchase on this guy, the side of this jackal-headed mask, which is quite good, because he was turning to look the other way, because Dr. King had hit him with a pamphlet. So yeah, and he sort of like goes poof, like that, and he turns around and he just backhands you with his hand. Yeah, and he succeeds. So roll away.
I would like to use my brawling.
Yeah.
Now that he's paying attention to me again.
Cool.
Just a success.
Yeah. Now, I think I played it wrong on the last time. Fighting back, the highest level of success wins. Draw indicates wins. Initiator wins. That's right. No, I was right. So, yeah. So, did you just get a normal success?
Just a normal.
Yeah, so I got a normal success, so therefore the initiator wins. So he whacks you.
Backhand me.
He backhands you for 2 points of damage.
Ow!
And it sort of like goes like that. And Dr. King, you are up.
Dr. King's feeling somewhat frightened now, but also feeling slightly elated that he managed to succeed in hitting this thing and it did something. He's going to try again.
With the pamphlet, yeah, go for it.
Maybe dropping the pamphlet and trying his.
Okay, so roll a
precious fist.
Yeah, right. You're going to hit with your fist. Go for it. So you drop the pamphlet and you sort of like see that Mr. Webber's hitting with your fist. So sort of like cascading all doubt around that you've got surgeon hands. That the last thing you actually want to do is to become some kind of boxer with your surgical hands that are sort of like used to perform. You just sort of like clench a fist and whack at it.
It's that, but it's at the moment it's die because the guy said I'm next. Or maybe lose sight.
Roll your brawl.
Get him!
No.
Yeah, so you sort of like make a swing at him, and he's just sort of like let's just see whether or not what he does. Yeah, he fails as well, and you sort of like just manage. You don't make contact or anything. You just sort of like go like that as he comes down. Mr. Webber, you're up.
If my father could see me now, he'd be ashamed and turn in his grave.
I presume with that backhand, it probably hit me in the face and sprayed a little blood on a table.
Yeah, so I got a bust lip. Yeah.
Would I be allowed to roll a spot hidden to see if I could quickly grab something heavy on this table that I was knocked onto?
Yes, you can. You will hit with whatever you find.
Fantastic.
So if you fail, it will be a pamphlet.
So just don't find the pamphlet that King's dropped on the table.
Yeah, because what I'm thinking you're doing, you're just sort of like reaching around for something in order to
Quickly
hit
grabbing.
it. Yeah. How much does your knuckle dusters do?
Knuckle Duster does D3 plus 1 since I'm not.
All right, yeah. So you're looking around for something a little bit more hefty. Okay, then, yeah. So roll. Use the grey dice, and I will give you +1 to your roll. So you need to use the spot hidden roll, but you roll the +1. So what this does now, so what it does is that it's a bit like having advantage in D&D. So what it does is that it rolls, if I give you +1 to your roll, it rolls two lots of 10. And therefore, and then so you can see there that you actually you actually got the hard, you got a hard. So it takes the best one. So your rolls were, you rolled 21, 19 and 11. So it actually takes the 19. You know, if it was +2, it would have taken the 11.
Mm-hmm.
Now
that's cool.
Now, if it was -2, it would take the worst one.
So the 78.
So the 21, yeah. Okay, then I think is 78 your 35 and 15 your skill. That's what yeah.
Oh, their skills. Okay.
Yeah, so you reach round and you found, quite ironically, it seems to be some kind of bust of Bass, the cat god, and you just like whirl it round onto the side of the jackal's head. Roll your brawl, yeah.
Bust of Bast!
Yeah, and you whack it into the side of the head. And yeah, it comes swirling into the jackal's head. Do some damage for me.
Oh.
It'll be the same as like a club would do.
Small club?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go ahead and roll a d6. Pow!
Yeah, and you whack it for like 5 points of damage as it sort of whacks on the side of the head, and it turns round to you and it sort of like goes like this and starts to come at you with its fist, and all of a sudden you hear this almighty gunshot and this sort of like that and the jackal sort of like staggers back slightly and then just sort of like moves for a bit and then just falls straight forward, and you sort of like duck out the way as it sort of like hits the ground, and you quickly sort of like glance behind you to say you know, where on earth has this this gunshot come from. And you can see behind you, just stood at the doorway, is Miss Lawrence, and she has a revolver out. And she's obviously just aimed and fired at this jackal, and she just, you sort of like look around her and sort of like look quite shocked, and she says, well, I never liked Anubis in any case, you know, and sort of like proceeds to hide the revolver back into the
so when
her bag or whatever. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. When the gunshot happened, Dr. King would have probably fallen backwards onto the desk. He's going to sort of like stand up and sort of like quickly sort of like straighten his shirt and waistcoat, and then he's going to run to the window. So, there was a second one, and he's going to run to the window, and he wants to look out the window. Yeah,
so as you sort of like look down, you notice that there seems to be a crumpled body. If you remember this, Jordan's office was really high up, and this was a terrific drop, and it's just sort of like it just looks like it's almost like this beast has concertinaed a bit as it's hit the concrete outside the pavement. And you also see, can you just roll a spot hidden for me? Yeah, and you can actually see what appears to be a man. It's definitely a normal man. He seems to be carrying the container that the other jackal masked beast has in the background, and he seems to be running off at quite a speed. And just because you got a critical roll, he stands out quite a bit in the passerbys, because he's dressed quite strangely. You figure by his attire, and you get a quick look at him, even at this distance with your perfect eyesight, he almost looks like of Egyptian origin. And as he sort of like piles off down one of the streets.
So with that,
yeah, hang on. Let Mr. Webber, what are you doing? Because that would have taken Mr. King some time to do.
Weber would have also gone to the window to see what happened to the downed figure. Would you like me to give it a little spot hidden there?
No, yeah. So yeah, you can roll a spot hidden. Otherwise, Mr. King can. You can roll it though. In any case, I don't mind.
Pow!
Yeah. So Mr. King sort of like tells you what he sees, but you do see the crumpled body, on the floor.
So King is going to go, there! Do you see that man? And point at where the man that's running away that you described him has now disappeared from.
Yeah, and you sort of like think, you can't see anything, Mr. Webber, at that point.
I'll take his word for it, I guess.
Yeah.
Dr. King is going to say, I saw a man of somewhat African, maybe Egyptian, possibly Egyptian, could have been Egyptian, I'm not sure, it could have been somewhere around there, running off with the box that the jackal that we see down there was holding.
I better go chase after him then.
As you turn round, you see Miss Lawrence. She's bent over this creature that sort of like staggered back, and he's sort of like fallen backwards onto the desk, sort of like next to Jeffrey Jordan. She looks quite robust for a woman, and she sort of like seems to be very close to this jackal-headed person. And as you turn round, Mr. Webber, as about to run after somebody, you hear her say, "It's time to see what's underneath this mask." What would you like to do?
It's a good idea, Miss Lawrence. I think, Webber, that by the time we get down there, that chap would have been...
Mr. Webber, what would you like to do?
I've delayed too long to chase.
Okay.
I'll take a look. I'll go over and take a look.
Okay then. So yeah, Mr. King, Dr. King, you sort of like turn round to this lady and says, "Yes, it's a good idea. Take the mask off." And she takes the mask off, and she sort of goes, "Oh!" and she just collapses on the floor. And it's just sort of like you're not too sure what's happened to her, but as you two come near the revealed the creature that was beneath the jackal headdress, could you both make sanity rolls for me, please?
Oh yeah. Oh no.
Dr. King is on form.
I'm going down.
So Mr. King, Mr. Webber, you take Mr. King, you take 1 point of sanity loss, and Mr. Webber, you take 4 points of sanity loss, as you suddenly see that what Miss Lawrence did was that she removed the mask of this creature, and underneath the mask is what can possibly describe as barely human. It looks like a semi-rotting corpse. It looks like it's been recently dug up, and it's sort of like you notice that one of its eye sockets is completely devoid of an eye, and there's sort of like maggots crawling around inside its brain cavity, and it's sort of like got half its jaw missing. And as you get close to it, you feel and smell that that rotten, decaying smell of a body that is probably being unearthed and somehow reanimated in some way. So you both take a bit of shock to the system, but not as much as allowing a lady to unmask this horrific sign. I think the doctor actually said, "Yes, go ahead, do it."
I was going to let's take the mask off, not thinking that she'd go off and do it herself. But yeah.
And I think that comes to 8:30. So I think that is a reasonable time to have our first break of the evening. Thank you to Jeanette for cheering us on with 100 bits there. That's much appreciated. I know the players will find that reassuring as well. Swift Rage, 100 bits. There you go. So you can see it in the chat. So we're going to take a quick 5 or 10 minutes break. We won't be long, just to allow us to stretch our legs and replenish our hip flasks before we come back and see what will happen to the collapsed Miss Lawrence, and what the investigators will find in the office, and maybe even outside. So we'll be back in about 10 minutes. and take those off. Yes, and we are back. How exciting! So the investigators have just had a brawl. I think is best to describe it, with one of the jackal-headed beasts that you can see in the picture. Jeffrey Jordan is bent over the table, not looking very much alive. Miss Lawrence has taken the jackal mask off the other guy that you all fought and she shot, and has fainted on the floor. And another, you have seen outside, the other jackal-headed guy jumped out with the like the scroll case and landed on the floor. And you can see he's sort of like there's no blood. He just seems to be like a crumpled heap down there. And you saw somebody, well, Mr. King saw somebody of Egyptian origin running off. He didn't stand out. He stood out in the crowd quite a lot. You can probably tell from the room, the office, the background of the office, that Jeffrey Jordan is just very similar to Miss Lawrence, is an Egyptologist. You can see from the thing, and yeah, there's a bust of Bast, the cat goddess, that's being used as a lethal weapon. Okay, guys, so Mr. King, Dr. King, what would you like to do?
So Dr. King's probably going to see that the good lady has fainted, and he's going to try. He's going to pick her up and he's going to put her in the office chair so that she's more decent.
Okay then. So first of all, make your strength roll to pick her up.
Takes her face out along the way.
Yeah, and you sort of like are rummaging around trying to get your hand sort of like under her multiple layers of skirt as she comes around, and she sort of like goes, "Doctor!" as if to sort of like say, "What on earth are you doing?" She said, "Please," and she sort of like pushes herself away from you quite, and she sort of like props herself up against the bookcase and sort of like says, "Doctor, you should know better to make such advances to a lady who is betrothed. I am quite shocked by both your advances." And she sort of like looks at you, and you suddenly get the feeling that she actually wants to stand up, and you sort of like go, "Oh yes," and you sort of like avert your eyes as she sort of like tries to stand herself up in the most ladylike fashion, and sort of like brushes herself down. Yes, Mr. Webber, what would you like to do?
I'd like to try and cover for my cohort here, and I'll say...
is there anything you want to do before that? Because you'll have a little bit of time.
Oh yeah, while he's trying to lift her.
Yeah. So just to remind you, there's the body outside the window. There's Jeffrey Jordan, who's over the desk, and if you remember, there's a desk that's very similar to his at home, and one of the drawers had been jemmied open.
And it was the same drawer that in the home desk was the only locked one?
Yes, yeah, the one that wasn't open at all, and you did think that was quite unusual.
Yeah, I did. I'd like to investigate the now deceased Jeffrey Jordan, if I may.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I can probably see he's clearly strangled.
Yeah. Do you have a medicine roll?
Oh, that's actually fair. Let's see what Aaron would think. I guess I'm going to investigate his body as best I can. Medicine is right here.
Are you rolling anything today? Well, you couldn't have succeeded on that in any case. I mean, is your
90s though?
Is it
90s?
Is your value one? Yeah, you definitely think he looks dead. No matter what, you're not too sure, and you do notice. Just make a spot hidden roll for me.
Just more my style, barely.
Yeah, you do notice that he seems to have quite a lot of bruising round his neck. As you go towards him, yeah. So the Miss Lawrence is now. You see as you sort of like come up from Jeffrey Jordan. You notice that Miss Lawrence is awake and sort of like stood up and giving quite the disapproving eye at the good doctor. And she sort of like catches something out of the corner of her eye. Sort of like looking over to the table, and she turns to you, Doctor, and says, "Sorry, Doctor, would you do the decent thing?"
Yes, of course.
And she said, "Oh, good, thank you." And she sort of like pretends to look at the bookcase for a moment.
What is the decent thing? Would either of us know?
Dr. King, roll, and both of you. You can roll your idea roll.
My guess would be that she wants us to carry the body out of the room.
Your guess is that she probably she passed out from seeing the.
Yeah.
So she wants them uncovered, and the other thing that she's coping very well at the moment with is seeing her fiance with his neck strangled, and you sort of like figured that it would only be gentlemanlike, Dr. King, not that you're not a gentleman, Mr. Webber, but you're less of a social class than Dr. King. Dr. King, this is not things that you would want a lady to actually see. So you find some suitable.
He'll probably try to place the mask back on the jackal, then for the deceased, he'll probably look around for something and then probably take he's got a Macintosh coat that he's wearing, so he'll probably take that off and lay that over. And
you sort of like drape it over and put the mask on, and she sort of like
he was rather awkwardly said, all's proper again.
Yeah, and she sort of like, thank you, Doctor. That might go some way to remediate your almost unfortunate advances earlier on.
Sorry, that was an unfortunate misunderstanding.
Yes, quite. Yes, Mr. Webber. Would you like to see what's in the drawer?
Yes, that is my next. Next
well,
is it still jimmied or?
It's open, and you can see that in the drawer there appears to be a whole load of bits of paper, and you figured that the scroll case that the other jackal person was holding would probably fit into this drawer as well, and there's a whole load of bits of paper in here, and I've got them prepared for you, so they will appear in your handouts as scroll 1 and scroll 2.
I got them.
Can you see them? So if you look at scroll 1 first, so this Miss Lawrence says that it is of that is actually Jeffrey Jordan's handwriting, and you notice that she's now got what appears to be a silk handkerchief that she's dabbing to her eyes. And so that's exactly what you see on both of the scrolls. So your interpretation is what you make of them. If there's any skills that you would like to make to understand specific sentences or specific parts of it, then, or to ask Miss Lawrence, then now would be the time. Or you might wish to do something else, and then take these with you. It's up to you.
Well, I'm definitely going to take these with me as evidence and put them with my newspaper evidence. But I'm giving them a read right now. That's
some dark stuff.
That's some very much alarming material that I'm reading here.
Yeah, could you both make a listen roll for me, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, Inspector Craddock. How are you?
Oh, no, not again.
Yes, Mr. Webber, you hear two things simultaneously. You hear from out the window, you hear some screams, and the constable banging on the nearby railing in order to attract other constables. And you also hear somebody coming up the stairs as well.
I'll stuff the scrolls away, in that case, into my filthy coat.
Yeah.
And, oh no.
Yes.
I'm gonna look to King for answers here.
I think it's a bit too. Does Dr. King know about the police outside, because he hasn't heard them?
Well, Mr. Webber probably says something like, "Did you hear that? The police."
Mm-hmm.
We should probably wait for Inspector Craddock, because I'm sure he'll be arriving soon. At least this way we'll be able to show that it's not.
So yeah, as you stand there, sort of like dithering, both of you, somebody comes down the corridor. It seems to be some kind of security guard or porter in those days. So they have a uniform on, and they sort of like come into the room, and they sort of like look at you two, and sort of like glance down at the broken lock, and look at Miss Lawrence, and then he sort of like says in rather a gruff voice, we heard a gunshot.
Dr. King's going to say, yes, please do send for Inspector Craddock from Scotland Yard.
So there was a gunshot? Who's been firing guns? He sort of like takes out what appears to be some kind of wooden truncheon from his belt, which seems to be his own weapon, and he sort of like looks at Miss Lawrence and sort of like looks at her and says, "Miss, do you need me to retain any of these two gentlemen?" And both of you sort of like look quite ashen white as he says that, and she sort of like says, "No, Bert, that would not be necessary. But I think informing the police and as soon as possible that there has been a murder of my fiance." And she sort of like signals over to the dead body. Or one of the dead bodies across the table, and Bert sees them for the first time and says, "Good God!" like that, as he sort of like sees the jackal mask back onto this zombie. He says, "Heaven preserves us! What on earth?" And Miss Lawrence sort of like seeing you two sort of like flustering, almost like takes control of the situation, and she sort of like turns around to Bert and says, "Bert, the constables, please, if you may." "Oh, yes. Please, miss, do come out of that room." "Bert, constables, please." "Yes, will you be all right?" She says, "I'll be fine, Bert. Constables." And he sort of like goes off with his truncheon still out, as fast as a man in his late 50s could actually stagger down the stairs. And Miss Lawrence sort of like turns to you, Mr. Webber, and says, "Our next move, Mr. Webber."
Sorry, the smell is still stuck in my nose. That
Yes.
creature. From we'll need to talk perhaps in less. I gesture to the room. Chaotic conditions. There's a bit that I learned from Mr. Jordan.
Oh, right. Yes, well, the constables will be here shortly. I suggest we go into one of the nearby archive rooms. I do apologise, although the smell is not as pungent as it would be in the rather slums of Cairo. I must confess, being in the same room as my dead fiancé is somewhat disturbing.
Yes, of course.
And she sort of like waits expectedly.
So yeah, Dr. King will sort of like pick up his medical bag on the way out, and then he'll walk out of the office towards one of the archives rooms, and then probably not being able to get in because they're probably locked, he'll just sort of wait outside.
Yeah, so you sort of like walk straight past the young lady and sort of like pick up your medical bag, and she sort of like says to you, Dr. King, you might wish to pick up your other object you dropped.
Oh, of course, yes. And he picks up his pocket knife and quickly puts it in his pocket.
You sort of like then leave the room, and she turns to you, Mr. Webber, and she says, I think the doctor lacks the social graces when there is a lady involved. Most gentlemen would, of course, allow the lady to leave first, Mr. Webber. Do you not agree with that social etiquette?
Sure.
Well, please forgive me, I forget. You are not accustomed to the social graces and the rather refined and more intellectual social classes of us English people. Alas, the good doctor appears to be somewhat of your breed rather than the posh upper classes. That is, I will forgive his misendeavour at this point. And she sort of like walks towards the door in quite a stately manner, and as she sort of like walks past in front of you, she turns to you, Mr. Webber, and says, thank you, Mr. Webber, very kind, and sort of like goes out before you, and she comes up to you, Dr. King, who's you're stood outside the archive room, and she sort of like stands there.
Could I do one thing before I leave? I just had an idea. I'd like to go to the window, if I may, and I want to examine the window sill, I guess, if there's like claw marks. I want to know if this was a way they got in, or if this would be even feasible for somebody like a good athletic build to climb.
Okay, roll an idea roll.
Okay. Idea rolls. Get some 63.
It looks like the window's been opened from the inside out, and then the creatures dove out of there. You don't think it was probably the point of entry. You figured the door probably was, and then it might have been probably locked behind them, and it was definitely that the crime scene would indicate that they were looking for something, and whether or not they encouraged Jeffrey Jordan to reveal its location before his very sad demise, then it is not clear, but you figure they probably came in the door rather than the window.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna make my way to join the group then.
Yeah, so the doctor is stood outside one of the archive rooms, and Miss Lawrence is stood there as well, and you come and join them. Yes, Dr. King, what would you like to do?
So Dr. King will first of all try the door. If it opens, he'll sort of push it open, then sort of like not walk through, but sort of like have a lean through to see if you can see any, because he doesn't know if there's any more of these jackal things around.
Yeah, no, it seems to be
concerned.
it seems to be like some kind of office for archiving information, etc.
So seeing that the door's empty, he's going to hold the door open and say, "After you."
Oh, quite unexpected, Doctor. Thank you very much. And she sort of like bustles in and goes and sits sideways down on one of the chairs, and waits. Okay, so just before the constables arrive, is there anything that you would like to talk to Vanessa Lawrence about?
Yes.
Go for it.
And I'm, as Aaron Weber, I'm going to try and be concise about this because I know that time is limited. I kind of want to. I'm going to trust her here as a player. I want to bring her up to speed, more or less, of what we've been up to, the connection between Orlin, Herbert, Gower, Toby, the deaths that we think this creature is involved. I'll even share the Abadan information with her because I'm being a trusting Tommy here. So the idea that people are dying because of the event in Abadan, and it's linked to the artifacts that Jeffrey Jordan had obtained, and we believe that the Colonel has one more. And I want to make sure to paint Jeffrey Jordan in a positive light here. That he was scared of the damage that might occur or something. Not like he's a villain or anything in this, especially the bad part.
So roll your fast talk for me.
Fastest talker in the West.
Oh, see, that's what you're good at. Yeah, and she definitely sort of like she sort of like uses phrases such as "how ghastly." Oh yes, I see. And when you mention the something that Jeffrey might have had and the Colonel might have, she sort of like says, "Oh, that explains his somewhat secrecy about it, and it is quite quite difficult to actually acknowledge that it would appear that his sightings were correct."
Seems so.
So it would appear that we are in quite a perilous situation here, gentlemen. Ideas?
I believe if we get the artifacts, perhaps this will end. That's the best I got.
The artifacts.
That's what Jeffrey Jordan called them.
Yes, I think we need to have as soon as possible go and talk to the Colonel, because he's the only one with the remaining artifact by the sounds of it.
What was, if you don't mind me asking, Mr. Webber, please excuse my directness, what was in Jeffrey's drawer?
Well, back at his home office, he had a similar desk like this, and I thought that he might have had his artifact in there. In the drawer here, maybe he had it here. Maybe he did. I don't know. But I found some scraps of paper, say names I don't fully understand. Star gods.
Right.
All seems strange and esoteric to me.
I think they might be his translations. He was working on an Egyptian scroll for some time. I only know this because he asked me about several hieroglyphs, about their meaning, and I know that he was translating an Egyptian scroll. Maybe that is helpful to you.
That might be. To be honest, I don't know much about the study of religions and spirituality. I'm not terribly.
Is there anything I can help you with?
I guess I'll pull the scroll bits out and pass them over to her. Keep my eye on the door because I'm a suspicious American. And these were what I found. If you have any ideas.
Yes. Oh. Oh, yes. I see. King of Darkness. Master of all wisdom. Yes. Abadan. Scroll number 1, I see. Which might suggest that there was... oh, yes. Scroll 2 continued. It would appear that we may not have all the translation. As the boy dying. Oh. Told of his prophecy. Yes. I think we have old gods. There is something very dark and sinister going on here. Brotherhood to a distant land. Oh. Yes. Undreamt of buyers. Oh.
Is this normal for Egyptian stuff?
Oh, no, quite. It appears to be some kind of prophecy. As the boy lay dying, Cthulhu told us of his prophecy, that though he might die, we will to preserve his body and soul intact, for in years to come he would return, though not to us, nor even in our land. I'm assuming that he's referring to Egypt here. Believe, as he said, would take his body and our brotherhood to distant land, undreamt of by us. Oh dear. Should beseech the tomb god Tawata to release from his sleep. Oh. Yes. This does not bode very well, gentlemen. Not very well at all. It seems that the scrolls, or the translation of which, refer to some kind of prophecy.
The body and brotherhood. You don't suppose the brotherhood are these jackal-headed
That would appear
bodies?
to be the case. That would be my conclusion. Yes. Taken to a far-off land. Undreamt land. Yes. I wonder whether or not that is referring to... Yes. You have probably already come to the conclusion.
London is the undreamt land.
Yes, it would appear that maybe the regiment were the people to carry these artifacts away. Tell me, you mentioned 2 artifacts. Pray tell, what is the second one?
Well, the thing is, I almost found out. I look at Dr. King. Toby was going to draw up a diagram of what the artifacts looked like, but
He was? That would have been...
he got called off to take out the rubbish.
Oh, did he not return? He seems like putting out the rubbish is quite a menial job. That probably takes no time at all.
Well, we found him in the alley with his spine snapped.
Oh, Mr.
And one
Webber.
of these things running away.
Yes, Mr. Webber. Sometimes I forget you are. Please forgive me. I am not yet accustomed to the abrupt nature of the Americans. Yes, quite.
My apologies.
Apologies accepted. Yes. So, we do not know what the final artifact is.
Perhaps if he would have had some information at his house, in the desks, and the research that he'd been. My apologies. Deceased fiance's apartment.
Well, yes. Does any of you have any history role or Egyptology or anything like that?
My history's a 5, and I don't feel like rolling the.
Okay then. So roll your educations, but roll it with the grey roll because you're having -1 to it. So you fail. However, Mr. Weber, you succeed, and you actually suddenly realise. So can you see on that one? And if you look at yours, that you rolled the dice 3 times. You got a 7, an 18, and a 64.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because it's a -1, I'm looking at the first two dice, and taking the highest. If it was a +1, I'm looking at the first 2 dice and I'm taking the lowest. So
Gotcha.
you rolled a 7, 18, and 64. So even on a -2 dice, I'm looking at all 3 of them and taking the highest roll, which is 64, which is still underneath your 79. So if it's a negative number, you take the highest out of the 3 rolls. If it's a positive, you take the lowest. So you, even though it was a -1, you still got a hard success with the 7, which is below the 15. So she turns. 18. Sorry. She turns around to you. You suddenly have this. You think back to your history lessons and your studying of various occult followings. And you suddenly dawn on you that one of the possible additional items could have probably been a mummy in some description. That is what would probably have been taken, and where the soul will be resurrected from. And you can share that with Miss Lawrence, and Miss Lawrence rolls. Let me just roll her Egyptology thing, because she has the roll. If I could find it, I can't find it. So she's sort of like she'll roll her archaeology. She fails on a 99, but you sort of like mentioned the mummy, and she goes, "Oh yes, that could quite be it. Yes, most definitely."
Dr. King, maybe your nephew might know about. That's something that would be hard to hide when you're retrieving. If that was something they took from Abadan.
I would have thought so.
Tell me, gentlemen, are you actually death itself? It would appear that everywhere I go around London, you actually appear at the scene of the crime. And he turns to Miss Lawrence and said, "Miss?" And she says, "Oh yes, I'll leave you to the police." And she gets up, and she sort of like moves, and Inspector Craddock sort of like takes his hat off and says, "Yes, miss. Excuse me, miss. Sorry to be so upfront about this, but please understand that there has been a death, 2 deaths here, maybe possibly 3. But can I ask your name?" "Yes, my name's Miss Lawrence. I am the deceased's fiancée." Oh, my apologies, my sincere apologies, Miss Lawrence. "Oh, no, thank you, Inspector, very kind of you. As you could probably imagine, I have arrangements to make." Oh, yes, of course, miss. Do you live in London?" "Yes, I am currently at my address in my townhouse." "Oh, right, thank you, miss. That is much appreciated. Thank you for your time." And he sort of like shuffles back and she sort of like walks past, and as she walks past, the inspector says, Constable, please show the good lady out. Oh, thank you, Inspector. Very dignant of you. And she sort of like, with a rustle of many petticoats, she heads out. And the inspector turns round and he sort of like looks at you and says, "The angels of death bring forth more victims." And he shuts the door behind him. And he doesn't sit down, he sort of like towers there. And he looks at you both and he says, "So, who is going to be explaining this situation first?"
Dr. King will immediately look at Weber and go, yes, we had an appointment with the deceased.
I am so pleased that I do not have any appointments booked in my calendar for the near future with you gentlemen. It would appear that anybody who actually has appointments with you meet a rather unfortunate ending.
Yes, it does seem to be a bit of an unfortunate circumstance.
Tell me, how did you know Mr. Jordan?
We had a meeting arranged for, as I said today, to discuss certain matters that have been unfolding. And upon arrival, we heard the sounds of a scuffle or something like that, and we tried the door, but unfortunately, it was locked from the inside. And so, fearing for the good doctor's life, we forced the door to find him.
And what was your appointment with Jeffrey Jordan about, Dr. King?
Well, it was about he.
Do you wish to lie or tell the truth?
Weber's gonna interject here and lie, saying something along the lines of he was a friend I had met through my ex-wife, Madeline.
Yes, fast talk, please.
For some reason in my mind, I remembered my fast talk having the same level of spot hidden. Anyways, let's roll it.
Yeah, she sort of like looks at you and says, "Indeed, Mr. Weber. So, Mr. Jordan is an old acquaintance then?"
Yeah, something like that.
Right. And what one of the there's a on the door, and a constable comes in, and the inspector sort of like turns and says, "What is it? I told you to let me question these people." "Sir, I think you should come and see something." What? One moment, gentlemen. And he sort of like steps outside, and you both you take roll a listen roll for me, please.
I'm so good at failing.
My listen rolls are on point tonight.
Yeah, Dr. King, you hear a conversation outside, and it goes a bit like saying, "There's a corpse in the room, dressed up as a dog," and the inspector sort of like goes, "What? A corpse? Yes, sir. There appears to be 2 dead people in the room." The inspector goes, "Yes, I know there's 2 dead people." And he says, No, one is very dead." And he goes, "Very dead? What are you saying, man?" And he sort of like says, "Please, sir, come and have a look." And you sort of like hear, he sort of like sticks his head back around the door and says, "One moment, please, gentlemen. Do not go anywhere." And he shuts the door. And he sort of like goes, you hear footsteps going off, and then he sort of like comes back in, and his face is somewhat slightly paler than before, and he sort of like comes in, he shuts the door behind him, and he actually pulls out a chair this time and sits down and says, "Gentlemen, did you bring a friend with you?"
Only the fiance of the deceased. She met us at the foyer and escorted us up here.
Oh, so Miss Lawrence is a friend of yours, Dr. King. Thank you. I was going to come to how you knew the good lady. Friendship, yes, okay. And what can you tell me about the other, shall we say, body in the office? The one that appears to have been shot. He looks at you. He looks at you, Mr. Weber, with very suspicious look, as if to say the doctor would never carry a pistol, but you Americans might do, you know. And he says, "Are you the owner of a revolver, Mr. Weber?"
I ain't got a revolver.
Oh, most surprisingly. Mr. King, I hope you have a license for your gun.
Unfortunately, to disappoint you, Inspector, I don't actually own one or even have one either.
Gentlemen, one of the bodies was shot.
I'm very much aware I was there when it was shot.
So the gun must have belonged to either yourself, Dr. King, or you, Mr. Weber.
Yeah, at the time I was in no position to have shot the creature. I can't understand it. It's completely outside of my medical expertise or even the realm of science.
So let me get this correct then. None of you have a gun, and yet there has clearly been a gunshot since it was heard on the floor below. And also, I find a rather deteriorating corpse shot as well, and yet neither of you have a gun. Very interesting. The next thing you'll be telling me is that the creature shot itself. I would like to remind you both, gentlemen, since it'll be a matter of time before we hopefully find out where the revolver is, that you do require a license to carry such weapons. So please make sure that your paperwork is in order. So, tell me, how many assailants were in the room when you forced your way in?
Yes, as I said, we forced our way in because we had concerns that the doctor was...
You seem to live your life by concerns, good doctor.
Well...
One concern after another.
It seems to be somewhat of a concerning habit.
Stop dying.
The people keep seeing... Yeah. Yes, Mr. Weber. There was two of them, officer. One of them fell out the window as we entered.
Fell or was pushed, Mr. King, Dr. King?
Most definitely fell.
Right. And that would be
in the hall.
That would be your testimony then. I see. And Mr. Weber, do you collaborate this story?
Indeed. I went in. All I wanted to do was save Jeffrey Jordan from these assailants.
So, may I just repeat what I have written down here? Both being friends of Mr. Jordan, you were concerned when you approached the door and broke it in, where you saw two assailants and the dead body. One assailant fell out the window, obviously quite accidentally, and just tottered on the edge.
Must have been somewhat surprised.
No, Mr. King, thank you.
Sorry, Inspector.
And then the second assailant was shot with an imaginary gun. Gentlemen, I might suggest that you take legal advice over this. Your situation does not look too good at the moment, and I don't suppose you, Mr. King, have the strength to strangle a man, but Mr. Webber, I have my thoughts are you are quite capable of such an act, both mentally and physically. Gentlemen, you'll be pleased to know that the other assailant that fell out of the window met quite a mangled end on the pavement below. He also appears to be in a similar state of decay as the one in the room. I propose to you, my conclusion is that your series of events are somewhat elaborated. It would appear to me that the good Dr. Jordan, Jeffrey Jordan, was probably doing some hideous work on corpses that he would probably been buying from body snatchers, and when you appeared at his door, he was probably in the process of actually trying to remove them by throwing one of them out the window, and obviously, since none of you have a gun, probably shooting the other one for some bizarre reason. How he died, he looks at you, Mr. Webber. I'm sure my investigation will come to a suitable conclusion. And he walks to the door, and as he walks to the door, he stops and he turns around and says, "Sorry, gentlemen, usual warning. Please try not to leave town."
Of course, Inspector. Would it be any trouble to retrieve my my Macintosh, which I draped over the deceased?
As you're talking, so excuse me, Inspector. He just sort of like walks out, and he turns to the left, so you know he's going to the stairs rather than anywhere else.
Yeah, Dr. King is going to go and try and retrieve his Macintosh if possible. If the police will,
you go up to the office, and there's a constable stood at the door, and as you come out, he goes, "Sorry, sir, this is a crime scene. No access."
Yes, I understand. I left my my Macintosh, my coat, in there. It's quite expensive. I was wondering if I could.
I'm sure you'll be able to retrieve it from the station, from Scotland Yard, sir. Once it has been cleared for my investigation.
Ah, right. Yes, I see. Of course. Right. Which is rather cold outside, so I'll just have to. I hope there's a cab.
I'm sure a cab will pick you up, Mr. King, Doctor. He looks at your bag, which sort of like gives you I'm sure a cab will be able to get you to your location before the coldness of the night creeps in.
Right, yes. Thank you, Constable. And then he's going to turn and walk away thinking, that's a damned expensive Macintosh. Better get it back, good nick, otherwise they'll have a formal complaint.
Yeah, so what is your plan of action now?
Hide under a rock.
No, we got to solve this crime, even if they think we're the ones causing it.
Yes, we need to clear your name, Webber. I think the inspector's trying to, how do they put it in the book, in the novels, fit you up for the job?
I think the inspector is working on the information he's given.
Yeah, I'm kind of putting myself in terrible situations. I was hoping maybe Vanessa might clear my name, but I also don't want to say ludicrous things. I think he'd probably think it's ludicrous if I said Vanessa was popping shots.
Well, I as a keeper, I'm quite reassured that you didn't mention that because, you know, a lady with a revolver.
Yeah, that's ludicrous. Apparently,
Preposterous.
Yeah,
for
probably
the era. For the era.
That's even a worse lie than.
but it
we don't
almost,
have one.
but it almost like got you into more issues.
Yeah, I think our next step.
Just to let you know, in those situations, if you ever want to give me a brief narration, and you're going to say that you, say for example, you say something. Jeanette in the chat says, "Make another appointment to set up the killer." If you ever want,
Think of that.
if you ever want to sort of like say something, and you do it in the past, you might say, I want to try to convince him that the shot was done by one of the people inside or the guy at the window. Then I would say, that's fine, roll your fast talk and then we can role play it out. And then I know what you're doing. So yeah, so something like perhaps saying that, you know, what one of the thing at the window shot, or even, you know, Jeffrey Jordan shot, you know, or one was shot.
Find no gun though.
Yeah, but therefore I think with your fast talk, Inspector Craddock would probably say, yes, I'm sure a thorough search of the investigation and the crime scene will actually locate the missing pistol.
Yeah. Man.
The thing is, we're okay. We didn't carry the corpses in, and Vanessa has seen that. And then
the other thing that
everyone else in the courtyard,
Yeah.
we didn't carry bodies in with us.
Yeah, and I think that might have been almost like a good opportunity to try to convince the inspector that there was something maybe not right here.
Dr. King probably wouldn't do that because he doesn't believe in all of that. Still, you know, it's science. You know, he believes in science and medicine and all that sort of thing. So he wouldn't say that there's.
Okay then. So
it's just
what?
like that.
Okay then. So what's Dr. King's explanation that two corpses?
He doesn't have one as yet.
Well, and that's why I would suggest that he probably can't keep that up, you know, and he's already seeing a whole load of peculiar events in this investigation, i.e. a man impaled on railings that would be impossibly too high.
I think it's fair to say that he's fighting a losing battle with that. But he's still fighting fighting.
I think what you
doesn't believe it, but he's starting to think.
Yeah, and I think what you have to do then is think of it more as role play that out. And for example, I might have said something like, if I was playing Dr. King to the good inspector, I might say something like, for example, you know, I understand that you might not believe in things like this. I was very much like that, so. But throughout this can you see? Then I can say, oh right, yes, roll your fast talk or whatever, or your persuasion, but have a +1 to the dice roll because you're using something like that. So guys, what would you like to do? The body count is increasing quite rapidly.
I guess it's a matter of we should probably go investigate Jeffrey Jordan's house to investigate that desk over there.
Okay.
But we also have the Colonel to deal with, and we may want to bring Vanessa along with us to Jeffrey's house.
And you've also, I mean, Vanessa, you might want to take to Jeffrey's house. You might want to take Alan to the Colonel's house, because rather than just two strangers turning up on the doorstep, you know, do you need to have Alan?
Dr. King was starting to get quite concerned because the army, the Buff's doctor died, and he didn't seem to have anything to do with the actual raid, which was why he sent the telegram telling Alan to go to his house so that Bates can
Good
look after
point.
him. So Dr. King's going to say perhaps we should go make sure Alan's okay, and then bring him with us.
Okay then, so let's do this in order then. The first thing I have to tell you is that Miss Lawrence is no longer at the museum. So you ask around and you found that she's left to her townhouse. You do make your way over to Jeffrey Jordan's abode, where he lives above in that shop, the apartment above a shop. But you also find that when you get there, as you arrive in your hansom cab, you do notice that there's a police presence on the door, and there's a constable stood there, and there's the landlady, who I forget her name. What's her name?
Miss Huntley?
Huntley. Huntley, yeah. Miss Huntley is almost like giving him, the constable, what for, about how awful it is and how bad for business it is that he stood there, and can't he sort of like step inside so she can close the door, and the constable's just taking no notice of her, and he sort of like says, you hear him say, no, there has to be no admittance, so you probably think that is not a good idea at the moment.
Just get out of the carriage.
Yeah, so you probably think that the best thing to do is to go back to your place, Dr. King, I think, where hopefully Alan Pace would be. Is that? Are you guys in agreement with that? Does that seem a sensible way forward?
Yeah, and wipe the dried blood from my mouth too.
So you sort of like you take it off, and you sort of like you stay in the hansom cab that you sort of like ordered, and you sort of like head off to Dr. King's place, which his house man, his footman, his butler sent a telegram to Alan Pace to go to to Dr. King's apartment or house, and so you head off there, and you get there it's about 2:00 in the afternoon once everything's happened, so it's in the afternoon time, and the hansom cab sort of like comes round the corner, and the first thing I would like you to do, please, is roll a spot hidden roll.
How many 90s can I get?
Okay then, so what, as always, the spot hidden roll is to see details. Okay, so you both see this. It's not that you don't see it. It's just that you're not seeing fine details. So I'm giving you less information now. So as you come around the corner in your hansom cab, you suddenly notice up ahead of you is that there's a cab parked outside your apartment, Dr. King. And you're quite dismayed about it, because you sort of like look at it, and it's not one of the for want of a better word, it's not one of the posh cabs. It's obviously something from somewhere like, say, Islington, which is a very sort of like cheap place to live, etc. Yeah, and you suddenly get that shiver down your back that you might have some vagabond or working class person who's found your name out and wants to be treated for syphilis or something, or consumption or something like that, and you're just sort of like thinking, oh no, and then you start like thinking, how could you get rid of them? What are you going to tell Mr. Webber? When you see Alan Pace coming out of your apartment, heading to the hansom cab, or the cab, the carriage, and as you see him coming out, you see that he appears to be being led or escorted by two men. One of them, Dr. King, you recognise straight away because he's similarly dressed, is the foreign person that you saw running away from the the museum, British Museum, and as your cab sort of like pulls up behind it, could you just roll a listen roll, both of you?
There's no way I could get a 90 right now. There's no way.
It's the first listen roll I failed, or maybe the second.
Yeah, you can hear Alan sort of going, oh well, like that, and as they get to the cab, they sort of like push him into the back, and one dies in the into the back, and the other one gets up onto the top and flicks the reins, and the cab starts to come along as your cab driver sort of thinks, oh, that's good, I've got somewhere to park now, and sort of like goes whoa, and turns around to you and says, it'll be 3 and 6pence, please.
Dr. King says, follow that cab.
He says, I beg your pardon?
I scream, follow that cab!
Which cab are you referring to, sir?
The one that's just driven off. Just after it. He's kidnapping my nephew.
Right.
Well, there'll be a gold sovereign in it for you if you follow that cab.
Okay. Well, roll your fast talk or persuasion. You can use either. I'll give you.
Talking to the doctor?
Well, yeah, either of you. I'm quite happy.
I would like to roll my fast talk if I may. Then.
I'll give you +1 to your rolls because you mentioned a golden sovereign.
How?
Yes. So roll yours as well, Mr. King.
Okay. I'll roll my persuasion because it's slightly higher.
Yeah, so you fail altogether, but the cabbie almost like understands your tone of voice. You see more of his sort of like class, and you sort of like say, follow that cab, and he sort of like says, he sort of like says, yes, of course. And then the good doctor says, I'll give you a golden sovereign or whatever. And the guy goes flick with the reins, and it's sort of like suddenly the carriage sets off again at full speed. Following the cab. Are you going to give any instructions to the cabbie apart from follow that cab? Just to let you know, you do have your own driver cab skill. It's down on your character sheets as drive auto. That would be your carriage driving skill.
That seems a terrible idea.
Yes, are you giving the cab driver any further instructions?
Don't lose him.
Yeah, he will assume that he will follow the cab. It's just that whether or not you want to give him any further instructions about if the cab stops, how far behind, how close do you want him to be, etc., etc.
That's a point.
At the moment, you sort of like both sort of like, you're not galloping through the London streets, but you're going at quite a speed, and and the carriage in front of you isn't pulling off, but it seems to be heading in sort of like almost like to Islington, in that general direction. And the cab driver turns around to you and says, would you like me to catch him up, sirs? Can I just say, can you roll your indecisive skills, please? Because I'm sure you've both got. I'm sure you both got a 99% skill chance on that.
Masters of it.
Just trying to think of the best way to go forward with this, because I don't want Alan to die. I've had enough death on my hands.
I think we say, just keep pace with him. Don't lose him, but don't overtake.
Oh yeah, he goes, aye, aye, Captain. and he sort of like carries on, and he sort of like keeps the cab at a sensible distance. And after about 20 minutes riding, you obviously you recognise it, Dr. King, that you're in Islington, and the cabbie sort of like turns around to you and says, "He's stopping. What shall I do, sirs?"
Stop. And then Dr. King will start fishing in his pocket for the gold sovereign in a bit.
So you just want him to stop here, where he is?
So stop whenever they stop.
Yeah,
Sorry.
okay then. So he suddenly brings the coach to a sudden halt, and you sort of like jerked back in your seat as it comes to a halt, and you sort of like hear the horse sort of like going like that, you know, as it's being forced, and he sort of like turns around and basically he tells you that the price of the journey plus a gold sovereign on top of it, so it's like he's charged you for the journey as well.
So Dr. King will turn to Webb and say, "Quick, keep an eye on them. Make sure Alan's okay." As he starts fishing in his pocket for the gold sovereign and a bit.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Webber, what are you doing?
Equipping my brass knuckles, and I'm gonna get out of the carriage, and are they disembarking from their vehicle as well?
Yeah, they seem to. But just roll a spot hidden for details.
Big money.
Now, see, that's not a 90.
Not
You're coming down. You're coming down. They seem to be almost like escorting Alan into the house. You can't see. They definitely got their arms around his arms. He seems to be talking at them. But make a listen roll. Yeah, you almost like hear him saying something like, "Well, if you wanted a suit, the best place to fit your suit is at my shop," like this, and he sort of like herded into the room, into a house. It's a 2-story house, and Mr. King, Dr. King, sort of like pays to the hansom cab, and you sort of like step away from the carriage and sort of like almost like hiding against in a sort of like an alleyway. And as you're waiting, trying to decide what to do, you notice that the 2 men come out of the house and get in the carriage and head off again. And they seem to go down the road for a while and then turn to the north and head off. So you can see a little bit further down the street, there is what appears to be a house. It has 2 floors, and it doesn't look a posh house. It doesn't look sort of like well maintained or anything like that. You figured that it's probably almost like upper lower class, middle lower class, lower middle class. So it's very much on the boundary. It's something that a sort of house that somebody with almost like a managerial role would have. But on a like in a factory or something like that, you know, it's not working men's stuff at all. You also notice that it seems to back onto what appears to be a graveyard. So the almost like the front door is sort of like to the front. It's sort of like front facing onto the street, and you can see the door, then 3 sort of like windows, and behind it there seems to be a bit of land, and then the railings of what appears to be a graveyard beyond that. There's no church in sight because they tend to have their graveyards in a proper graveyard place. and churches would use it, but it's not on the site of a church. It just seems to be a graveyard. What would you like to do?
Shall we try and... I mean, I see two options whether we can either send a telegram to Craddock to say something's going on here and ask him to come and help us, or we can and have to wait for a while, or we can... They seem to have gone. I mean, there might be more inside, but we can try and rescue Alan.
I'm not willing to wait to see your nephew die. We're gonna go in there. We're gonna save him.
That's good. Okay, let's go then.
Okay,
we'll make our way to the door.
Okay then, and just 1 second. Let me just do this. So it won't be that your character tokens are on here because the scale's too small, but I've sort of like made up a map for you. So you'll be able to sort of like see where things are. Hopefully you can just see a strip of one strip in the middle of the sheet at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so if you just watch where I ping, so this is the door.
Yeah.
And the other three things, these things are windows.
Okay.
Okay, and you're on the front of the house, so you can see that the house turns on both your left and the right. If you wish to go walking round there, I can reveal the rest of the house, or if you're quite happy where you are, then that's absolutely fine.
I want to say to the doctor, try the front door. I'll see if there's a back entrance.
Yeah, right, okay. Dr. King is going to go straight up to with his medical bag in hand. He's going to go straight up to the door, and he wants to try to see if it opens.
Yeah, you sort of like turn the doorknob and try to push it, but it appears to be locked. Mr. Weber, you see, I'm going to reveal around the house for you.
Ooh.
You see that?
Yeah.
Right. The only other thing that you see, okay, and I'm going to show it to you. I'm just going to put it on roughly where it is. Here, there's what appears to be a coal chute. So where the coal would be delivered, which is quite usual in Victorian houses, because of course a lot of the things are run by the heating will be coal fired, and they don't want coal being put through the house. So that's the coal chute. So the coalman would bring the bags and just empty the bags down there, and from living here that would then go down to a coal bunker, probably in the cellar. And that's where it would be. And you can see as you go along the back, you can see that there's a very narrow piece of land before the railings of the graveyard. Could you roll a spot hidden for me, please?
I would love to. Pow.
Yeah. As you walk along the back looking at the windows, I'll tell you about the windows in a second. You do notice that several of the bars in the railing to the graveyard have been removed or bent. Okay, so there's roughly a gap that a human could actually pass through. You notice that right the way round, all the windows are actually shuttered. So you can't, they've got little slats in, and you sort of like peer in, and there seems to be no light emanating from any of them. As you peer through, you can get various descriptions. If you want to check at any window, then you can do.
One question I have, and if you want me to roll idea, that might be good. Would I know whether or not a coal chute like that I could safely kind of drop down through it?
Okay, so it depends how full the coal bunker is. For example, if it's full of coal, then it will actually block off the exit into the coal bunker. If it's empty of coal, or has some coal in it, then as you go down the chute, you would have to almost like crawl down. You're going to get very dirty doing it no matter what. It's probably as wide for you, as in as wide as a person to go down. And then on the other side, if it was empty down there, then you might get... you might fall into something you don't actually know. When you look down, there's no light coming up from the chute at all.
Okay. I'll make my way back around front then.
Okay, yeah, so you're both stood at the front here, and Dr. King tells you that the door is locked.
Share my information as well, and kind of trying to position Dr. King in a way where it looks like we're having a conversation outside the house, and if people were looking at us, they'd see him in front of me.
Yeah,
once I kind of...
It almost like looks like a doctor's come to the house, because Dr. King has his bag with him. Yeah.
In that case, I'm going to try and force this door.
Are you going to lockpick it or force it?
Force it with my body. No.
Okay then. So that would be a strength roll for me, please.
Okay, this is gotta not get a 91 this time.
Right, 17 to make it work, or you can push the roll and have another go at doing it.
I'm gonna push it.
Okay, roll again.
I know. I'm.
Don't watch.
Okay.
Don't break your shoulder.
Yeah, so you sort of like try it on the first one and bash it and think, good grief, and then so you really prepare yourself and you ram your shoulder into it, and the door sort of like comes almost like off the hinges. There's such a force, and you actually go into the room, into the entrance, and you sort of like land on the actual floor. Could you just roll your dodge for me, please? Yeah, that's fine. You don't take any damage at all, and I'm going to reveal a little bit. So you can see that there's a set of stairs going up. There's an entrance hall. There's a room off to your right, and there's a door where it says door to cellar. It's quite obvious that that goes down to the cellar, and there's a set of stairs going up. The first thing that you all notice is that normally you would expect in an entrance hall to have a coat stand, an umbrella stand, a hat stand, various small tables to put oddities on and things like that. This place is completely bare of anything like that. It's almost looks as if there's nobody living here. Both of you, can you please roll your luck? So what I'm doing is, this is a luck roll. Okay, so I'm using it to see whether or not anybody else saw or heard this happening.
Oh gosh.
Right. Okay then. So so you sort of like burst in, and you're in this area now. Yeah. What would you like to do?
I want to pick up the door and put it back kind of up in place.
Okay. Is Dr. King? Are you going in as well?
Dr. King is going to go. He's going to go in. He's going to go into the hallway, and then he wants to look down this way to hope there's an entrance into the door.
Okay. I'm just going to.
He's just going to go room by room until he finds his nephew.
We'll put you on and just make you a lot smaller.
Can I zoom in?
Yeah, we got to find your nephew quick.
Yeah.
Can you both move your figures all right? Or do I? No.
I can't.
Can I have permission, please? 1
second. Mr. Webber is slightly bigger than Dr. King.
That's not good enough.
Okay.
So yeah, Dr. King's probably going to walk to about here and hope that there's a. Well, he's going to walk. He's going to walk down this corridor that I'm pinging
Okay.
him
Yeah.
until he finds a door.
Yeah. It's not actually a corridor that you come into. What is a large room. You notice that this seems to be some kind of living room. You also notice that there is some furniture in here, but it's covered with dust cloths. And the other thing that you notice is that there seems to be some almost like makeshift beds in here, maybe 3 or 4. They're just sort of like scattered around as if people have been sleeping on sofas. Really uncouth thing to do, but sleeping on sofas rather than actually making a bed or anything. Yeah, so Mr. Weber, you have now balanced the door in place. Just roll your luck again for me, please.
My luck is a little sad.
Yeah, okay, that's absolutely fine. Thank you. Okay, yeah, so you both can move your characters now, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So King's probably going to carry on. He's just going to go straight through the living room. He's not being quiet because we've just smashed the door down, so that's going to make a loud noise. He's moving quickly, and he's going to move to this door here.
Okay, Mr. Weber, what are you doing?
Since he's going down that way, I'm also same tactic. I'm moving quickly, not quietly, and I'm going to go to this door.
Okay then. So I presume that you're both opening the doors, and then I can reveal everything, and then you can see what you can see. So, Mr. King, yours seems to be covered in dust cloths like everything else. It seems to be some kind of dining room. Mr. Weber, you seem to be in a kitchen. The Fs, by the way, are fireplaces.
Okay.
And then there seems to be what appears to be like a butler's pantry where food is kept, and then there seems to be an entrance onto the dining room. Mr. Weber, so you can see that there, and Mr. King can see that, and there's a door in between you. That Mr. Weber, you probably come through that door. Give Mr. Dr. King a bit
swings round with
a bit of a shock, but I won't ask him to make a sanity roll at this point. Yeah, okay.
Not that ugly.
So I'm assuming the miscreants and Alan are not in the dining room then.
No, it seems completely and utterly empty.
Let's try upstairs.
It's a good idea, and Dr. King's immediately just going to turn around and walk to the stairs the way he came.
Okay, so move yourself to the stairs, and then I will reveal. I'll move you down onto the other map. I've revealed it for you, but I'll move you down so you don't happen to stumble into anything else. So the stairs goes up, and there's almost like a bit of a balcony. Up at the top there's a fireplace, and then when you look down this corridor here, you're definitely on the first floor now. You can see these here along the back are boarded up windows. The other 3 on the southern wall and on the eastern wall, those are doors.
Weber's going to immediately go for the door at the end of the hallway. Like so. If you want to move me back, you can.
Okay, that's cool.
Dr. King will go to the nearest door and then work his way down and meet up with Weber.
Okay, so I presume that you get to those places and you look at each other and you decide to open them at the same time.
Yeah, so we'll probably go.
Yeah, okay then.
Type thing.
Yeah, good.
So like 3 nods and then go on the 3rd nod.
So your area seems to be the bathroom.
Yes.
Your area is the interesting one.
Bathroom's not interesting?
No, well, it depends whether or not something's inside it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you do notice that this is definitely a bedroom. It's still got the dust cloths over everything, but you'll notice that just down to the side there's what appears to be a corridor that goes off to the west.
Okay.
Or
No
it
Alan
turns. Yeah. No, there's nothing in this room at all, apart from beds and dust cloths.
Beds and dust cloths. So Dr. King's immediately going to go down to, seeing that the room's empty, he's going to, in seeing like this corner thing, he's going to go and explore that first.
Okay then. So, Mr. Webber, you just see Dr. King say nothing but just enter into the room, and so Dr. King, you come down to this and sort of like almost like quite bravado now.
Adrenaline's a pumping.
Yeah, which is completely sort of like out of character. You come to, there's a little corridor that ends in a door. Mr. Webber, what would you like to do?
Having looked in the bathroom and seen nothing of interest, I'm gonna go to the next door, which would be this one right here.
Okay, cool. Okay, so you open that one, and it seems to be some kind of bedroom. There's a lot of beds with dust cloths over them, and a fireplace, and a boarded up window that you can see on the southern side. Yes, back to Dr. King, what would you like to do?
Sorry, did you say this was a window or a door? That way?
No, it's a door.
Okay, sorry. He's going to advance to that door, and he wants to open the door.
Okay then, so you advance to the door and you open it, and it seems to be a closet. There's nothing inside. It seems to be almost like a dressing room.
Okay. He's going to say "drat," and then he's going to sort of like accelerate his footsteps back into the main hallway.
Yeah, and so you can see each other once again.
He's going to look over to Mr. Webber and go, "No, nothing."
Let's go to the cellar then.
Okay, so if you stay still, I'll drag you both and put you back onto the top floor. Yeah, so there is the door to the cellar.
I'm gonna give it a try.
Yeah, it's not locked or anything.
Creak.
Yeah, you open it, and there's definitely a set of stairs going down. It does look quite dark down here, by the way.
Have I seen any lanterns or anything around the house? Any candlesticks?
Both of you roll a luck.
I'm a lucky fella.
Yeah, you don't see any in the entrance hall. You think that there might have been one in the living room where the sleeping quarters were. So you figure there might be one of there in the living quarters, the living room that you can find. And who's going to be carrying the candle? It's on a little sort of like candlestick holder.
Probably Dr. King then in that case.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm going first with my brass knuckles ready to.
Yeah, because Dr. King now has a candle in one hand and his bag in the other hand.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a set of stairs that actually go. There's a little sort of like pathway, and then it goes down. I'll show you it on the next map, and then you'll be able to see it. If you look right the way down at the bottom, you should be able to see a tiny bit of exposed staircase.
Yeah.
Can you see that? So so what happens, I'm just moving you down. So that first almost like entrance is that first little bit is sort of like flat. It's sort of like a landing. It's level on your level, and then there's a set of stairs that goes down, and Dr. King sort of like holds up the candle, and you seem to be walking down into some sort of storage area. You can see that there's a door. I'm just going to bring you down into the room. You can see that there's a door here. These here seem to be almost like old windows that are all blocked off. It looks like this house might have been here and there's been various alterations done. You're not even too sure that that might have been almost like being able to look out on a small sort of like flat bit of land that then went up again. You're not too sure, but they're definitely been boarded up, and they're definitely windows. It looks quite strange. And then over here you can see a door. It's not a doorway, it's a gap. So that's actually behind the staircase from where you are at the moment.
I'm gonna make sure that Dr. King's still following me, and gesture for him to keep following, and then I'm gonna go to this doorway up at the top, and I'm gonna try that door.
Okay, yeah, the door opens into a room, and at the far end of the room, you probably have to step into it to see everything, plus to get the light in here from Dr. King. So I know you can't see yourselves at the moment, but I'll tell you in a second. So as you step into the room, the candlelight lights it all up, and you notice that on the floor, at the far end, you can see the coal chute that you saw up above Mr. Webber, and you can see that there's a pile of coal there. There's not a great deal of it, but the most disturbing thing about this room is that it's actually full of what appears to be decomposing bodies. It's as if it's full of almost like zombified bodies that are just sort of like lying, and you can see men and women and children all sort of like at various states of decay, and the smell is quite horrific. Plus actually seeing these, especially in that subdued, almost like spooky lighting that a candle gives you, does require you to make sanity rolls.
It's the moment you said bodies, I already had my finger on the trigger.
Yep. So you, Dr. King fails. You both fail. Okay. So this is for you, Mr. Webber.
This is basically like that. What is it? Jeepers Creepers with the Cathedral of Bodies.
Yeah. So Mr. Webber, you lose 4 points of sanity. Mr. King, Dr. King, you only lose 1 point of sanity because you're quite used to seeing these dead bodies, you know. But it's just the amount and the smell in this sort of like situation, yeah, you know. But it's almost as if they've been dumped unceremoniously around the place. You do figure, which is even more probably horrific, that. Just roll an idea roll for me, both of you. Yeah, so you both recognise what you think. Mr. Webber, you saw the gap in the cemetery. You think they've probably been exhumed from there, totally illegally. But to make matters worse, you think that they've actually been thrown down the coal chute into this room. You know, and yeah, it would have been interesting if you'd gone down it, because you would have probably landed on a corpse, and I couldn't resist but probably having it suddenly almost like liquefy underneath your weight or something.
Well, I wouldn't be able to see either, so I just down here in the dark grabbing bodies, just
and rolling sanity. So this they look very similar to the body that you saw with the jackal head on. How dead bodies can walk through the streets of London, you have no idea. Let me take you by the hand and lead you through the streets of London. I'll show you something.
Dr. King's probably going to, having seen this sight, he's had enough. He's not even going to turn around. He's just going to back out.
Yeah, and you sort of like, both you and Mr. Webber back out, and you sort of like close the door behind you, and you sort of like look at each other quite, both quite pale, almost like dreading what you might find through the gap.
To the gap. That's exactly where we're going.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
I whisper to Dr. King while we're walking over there. We'll need to report this to the investigator.
Okay.
Will do, and hopefully he won't think it was us.
So I will tell you this. So as you entered this room, you notice something quite strange in the corner. It appears to be a 7 or 8 foot tall statue. It has a jackal head, an Anubis head on it, and it has what appears to have a torque round its neck. It seems to have almost like a bare chest and upper torso, and then it seems to have one of those wrapped around Egyptian sort of like dresses or skirt, and then sort of like normal legs and sandals on. It actually looks quite big and almost like very, very daunting. It seems to not move at all. It almost like seems to be solid in the lamplight. You do notice that round, it has its torque, but then over the top of it, it seems to be wearing a medallion. Could you please tell me what you would like to do first? Just to let you know, there's I'm going to put you on. This room seems to be mainly storage areas, and the statue we'll call this the Child of the Sphinx, just for reference. And you can see that further on, throughout the coming out into the other room, is another entrance, an open entrance, and you can see that in this room there is the tied up body of Alan Pace. He seems to be on his side. He seems to have his hands behind his back and his ankles tied, and he's almost like in a fetal position, almost like on his side. And so hang on, I'll just put a marker on. So he's sort of like here.
I want to kind of grab Dr. King and lightly push him towards going to get his nephew.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make it obvious that my intention is to stand aggressively towards the statue, even though that might seem nonsense to him.
Okay then. So Mr. King, just move your character back, because there's a really important question that I need to ask you before you charge across. I need to see how you're moving around the room. This room. Okay. So Miss Dr. King sort of like went straight back to here. Mr. Webber, you were saying something about aggressiveness that I didn't catch.
Yeah, I was gonna put myself right here, and then let me get my drawing hand out, and then I was gonna kind of push him so he'd go like this.
Okay then, cool. So so Dr. King goes straight in, and you sort of like come into the area, but as you go past Dr. King and as you stand there and the light illuminates the Sphinx, the Child of the Sphinx, you suddenly realize that it's not a statue. It's actually got flesh on it, and it's quite solid flesh. Sanity rolls, please.
Oh no.
God. It's Anubis himself. Weird.
Anubis, you and I need to make a deal.
So Dr. King, you're fine. You probably just catch it out your side. Mr. Webber, you're not. And you suddenly realise that this thing is actually not a statue at all. It's actually a thing. It's actually this 7 or 8 foot tall huge creature is actually possibly living. And that almost like really shocks you.
I'm going to start whispering into it then, like a crazy person.
Yeah, and you lose 2 points of sanity.
Thank you. Let me just take that off the top, and I'm going to whisper. Just let us pass. We're good people. We didn't do any of that. I'm still keeping my fists up, ready to sock this giant.
Yeah, and you're sort of like looking at its belly button roughly, and you're sort of like gazing up at it. Doctor, you get across to Alan Pace, and he seems to be. Just roll your medicine roll for me.
Oh, please not spine snapped.
Yeah, you suddenly realise that he's got quite a big bruise on the on the back of his head. It looks like he's being knocked unconscious and tied up here. He's definitely unconscious out. He's got quite a nasty head wound on the back of his head. You don't think something like smelling salts or anything like that will bring him round. You think he's probably got some kind of concussion, if anything.
Yeah. So if able to, Dr. King wants to carefully put the candle down. He's going to put his medical bag down, and he's going to pull out his pocket knife, and he wants to start trying to cut him loose. Although he's unconscious, he wants to cut him loose so that it's easier to...
Yeah, it's quite easy to cut the ropes. You do notice that the ropes haven't been tied particularly tightly or anything like that. It's almost like looks a bit of a rushed job. Mr. Webber, can you just make a spot hidden roll for me, please?
Hurry up, Dr. King.
Yeah, you're not sure about this, but you were sort of like looking at the statue, and you kept looking over, and you're not too sure, but you just think you saw the statue's sort of like torso move, as if it's just like taken a breath. And could you also make a listen roll for me, please?
I was ready to hit sanity. So.
That's fine. Yeah, you sort of like you see it out the corner of your eye, and then you sort of like flick back, and it seems to be completely still again. But you're a little bit on edge now. And Miss Dr. King, what do you wish to do?
Dr. King, has he managed to cut?
Alan Pace is now released from the bounds, from his bonds, but he's still unconscious.
Yeah, Dr. King looks at Alan and thinks he's probably not going to be able to pick Alan up.
You would be with a successful strength roll.
Well, yeah, in that case, he'll try doing that first. So he's going to try and like do a fireman, what we now call fireman's lift. He's going to try and put him over his shoulder.
Yeah. Okay. You can't. Do you wish to? You can look it if you wish.
I'll look it to get a.
So you need to take 12 points off. Yeah.
Yep.
So you managed to get him up over one shoulder. So you've got him on your left shoulder. You've got your left arm round his legs to keep him there, and your right hand you've got your bag.
Yep. That's right.
Well, somebody needs to grab the candle. I'm assuming I'm able to glance over nervously with my edginess and be able to notice this mathematics error in arms.
Yeah, and you can sort of like go and you sort of like pick up the candle. So you've got the candle now, and what would you like to do?
Keep an eye on that horrible creature there, and then I'm gonna try and do my best to make sure that if this statue lunges at us, it's gonna hit me before it hits Alan and the doctor.
Got you. And what are you planning on doing?
Get out of here.
Okay then, so you head back to the stairs, and two things happen here, quite not quickly, but Dr. King, can you just make a listen roll for me, please? Thank you. Yeah, so both of you, as you come back through and you're walking past, the statue definitely almost like readjusts itself, and almost like as you go past it, you see it suddenly, its head sort of like goes like that, and sort of like starts monitoring you as you go past. Now you can make your sanity rolls.
On walking. Pow!
So you both fail it. So as this statue that you thought was a statue actually starts to move and monitor you as you go along, Dr. King, you lose 8 points of sanity, and Mr. Weber, you lose 4 points of sanity. And you're just going up the stairs when you hear from further up the bang of a door. And just roll idea rolls for me, please.
I've got an idea of who's knocking at the door.
Yeah, Mr. Weber, you don't think it was knocked at the door. You think somebody almost like went to go in the door that you propped up, and it's actually fallen down, and there's been this almighty bang. And Mr. Weber, you definitely hear two voices upstairs that appear to be talking in a language. What languages do you speak?
American.
English.
I'm glad you didn't say English then. Just Mr. Weber, do you just speak American? You don't have...
Yeah, that's what I got. Language own.
Okay, then. Yeah, so it's definitely not in English or American. And that is where we will leave it for tonight, I think, since it's 10:30. And so I think the phrase "caught between the devil and the deep blue sea."
Which is the devil, which is the deep blue sea? I'm kind of going for the Anubis statue as the deep blue sea, in which case I'll take the devil.
I think that's very interesting. What will actually happen next? And I tell you what I'll do. Look, just in case you want to see anything, I will leave you on the map of the house.
Okay.
So yeah, so you can see where you are, etc., etc. Just in case you want to have a think about it. Easy Prey says the dice does not like you.
We've had some good rolls.
I say it likes me.
I mean, the universe killed my daughter, so.
Yeah. So well done. A little bit further towards the solving the mystery. I think one more session. Hopefully one more session and you will be sorted. But congratulations, because you've actually managed to save somebody.
I know.
For
me, that's a track record.
Yeah, it was when Dr. King said, "Oh, Mr. One of you said, please tell me that his back's not broken." It's just, or
can't handle it.
He's been strangled or something like that.
No, we can't have another person dying.
Yeah. So well done. Hopefully a little bit closer to solving the mystery. And you probably have a good idea what's actually going on now. I say that, and I don't know whether or not you have or not, but I think you've literally got all the pieces of the puzzle now. You can make assumptions. And you've caught Alan Pace. You've managed to rescue him.
Wow.
Hopefully he might recover. But whether or not you rescue yourselves, we will only find out next week. So, as always, does either of you two have any announcements to make?
No.
So, Mr. Webber, what did you think about tonight's session?
I know a bit about the god that was listed in the scrolls, so I was trying to separate that from my character.
Nice one.
Nyarlathotep, if
Yeah.
that's a pronunciation. That one, it's kind of a mean god as far as I remember.
Yeah, he certainly is. So not one that you want to mess with.
Kind of think that statue might be one of his forms that I'd heard of, but
Cool.
don't really want to mess with him. But at the same time, this is a really nice basement adventure. It's been fun and anxiety inducing.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering how much sanity you've got left. Well, how many hit points you've got left? That's the other thing that worries me.
9.
So yes, Dr. King, what did you think of the adventure so far? The session tonight.
I'm drained. Put it that way.
Of sanity.
It's been brilliant. It has been really, really good. I really enjoyed it.
I think I enjoy how sometimes there's some real nice social encounters that can get up to in Victorian Britain, because the social class and the way men and women interact with each other is completely different, to what we expect today, and I just loved the way that I think Alan Pay, is a wonderful character to play. I love playing him. I think he's quite interesting, and Vanessa Lawrence is quite tough,
Yes.
but she can, and I think that's why I would definitely play a lady character in Victorian Britain, because you can literally have the two sides of her. She can be quite tough, but when needed, she can literally sort of like say, no, sorry, you should let me go first. You should hold the door open for me, and sort of like work on that. So you've had quite a few adventure sessions. So next week will probably be the last one. For my announcements, hopefully I'll be streaming tomorrow some ESO. Lots of nice things coming up there. There's a lovely pet coming up to there as well. Just to remind you, we do have a Discord channels. The link is down below, or you can, I think I've put in a Discord link now. There you go. So please do come along and join us there. There is a Call of Cthulhu chat there that the players can engage with. Well, everybody can say what they want. I'll play ESO tomorrow, and then hopefully on Saturday you get a double stream. You get ESO, and you also get Mithras on at 7 o'clock on the evening, so that's up and running as well, so that was certainly worth a visit. Sunday more ESO, and then hopefully next Tuesday Shadowrun, and then next Thursday back with Webber and King for probably the final episode of what is the adventure is actually called the Night of the Jackals.
Oh no!
But I've called it the Abadan Mystery, because it seemed appropriate. So, yes. Thank you for everybody. If you're in the chat, thank you for coming along and listening to us tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Easy Prey 2015, fantastic streamer. He was playing Warframe, but he plays late about 11 o'clock for us, because I always listen to him on my iPad in bed, and then I end up going to sleep, and then sometimes he changes his game halfway through and starts to play PUBG, and I wake up panicking that I'm being shot at, because all I can hear is gunshots and things like that. But great streamer, so if you're not a follower, please go and walk over and follow Easy Prey. J.A. Briggs 79, who was in beforehand, she actually DMs. She's a keeper for Call of Cthulhu adventure, so by all means go over to her, and if you would like some more Call of Cthulhu RPG, then she's the place to be. So guys, only remains for me to say to each and every one of you, please remember to be who you are and say what you feel, because the people who mind don't matter, and the people who matter don't mind. Have fun, and I will catch you all later, and until then, consider yourself well and truly waffled. Have fun, guys. Bye. I need to make sure I click the right one now. There's an ending. Here it goes. See ya.